We warmly welcome you all in this online international conference. BSIP is using NECLIME platform for this conference and is very thankful for the same. I am also pleased to inform you that this year BSIP is celebrating its Platinum Jubilee. So in this conference, we have total 62 participants, and these participants belongs to 11 countries. So we have, in this conference, we have 5 invited talks, and other talks are about 39. So we have 44 talks total. The invited talks have 30 minutes and 10 minutes for discussion. So total 40 minutes for invited talk. Other talk have 10 minutes for talk and 5 minutes for discussion. So total for 15 minutes. So I'm giving next to Torshan Uteshar. He will introduce to NECLIME. So Torshan Uteshar, please.
Thank you very much, Gaurav. I will try to share this screen. Do you see something?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, that's good. Well, welcome from the part of NECLIME to this NECLIME online conference entitled Neogene Climate Evolution and Biotic Responses in South Asia. And we are particularly happy, first of all, that this Jubilee conference of the Birbalsani Institute has been organized in the frame of NECLIME. Oh, I can switch. Can move on. Ah, yes. Well, some of you might be not so familiar with NECLIME, so I would like to say a few words about the network. NECLIME is an open international network of scientists working on Cenozoic climate evolution and related changes of continental ecosystems. So far, it has around 136 members from a total of 37 countries. What are our objectives in the network? These are reconstructions of patterns in time and space. First of all, that's how we started. These changes concern the paleoclimate, while we regard climate dynamics in analyzing proxy data and modeling, also paleovegetation in analyzing ecosystems, past ecosystems, also based on proxy data and modeling. Now there's a second complex. This is the history of biodiversity, which concerns evolution, speciation, and extinction, extirpation events, dispersal routes and barriers, and the quantification of biodiversity. And taking all these aspects together, we analyze interactions and try to develop new methodologies in a multi-proxy scale. NECLIME has 5 working groups, you see here listed, and if you might be interested to join one of these working groups, you can go to our website. Apart from the numerous papers published by our members in the context of NECLIME activities and research, we have released 6 special issues so far, which are listed here. And the latest special issue in the Geological Journal was released this year. It's about biodiversity and flora patterns in the course of climate change. For more information on the NECLIME network, I would ask you to have a look on our homepage. The homepage address is written down here, and it includes information on forthcoming events. First of all, our workshop activities. You can get publication lists of NECLIME members and download materials, and you will find there useful links for your work. If you would like to join us, please write an email and let us know. You see here listed the members of the coordination team. You can contact any of us in respect to membership. So this takes me to the actual meeting now. As you know, South Asia is a crucial region for Cenozoic environmental change in Eurasia, and of course in the focus of interest of the NECLIME network. There are profound paleogeographic shifts that impacted regional climate dynamics throughout the Cenozoic and the evolution of ecosystems, and triggered the migration of biota. For instance, the sedimentary record of the Shivaliks holds the key for reconstructing Himalayan uplift and the evolution of monsoonal patterns throughout the later Cenozoic. And to understand this, and also the paleo conditions of South Asia throughout the Cenozoic, the Biotic Institute of Paleosciences is the perfect place, as I think, for dealing with these topics. And also I'm happy to say that there's a long history in scientific collaborations of Biotic Institute scientists with the NECLIME network. And this takes me to our last physical meeting in which was held in Lucknow, and shows a couple of pictures from the good old times and the fantastic stay we had there. And to conclude, I'm very happy to hand over to Vandana, which will present us the story of the BSIP and the details on this Jubilee conference. Thank you very much and enjoy the meeting.
Thank you, Torsten. It's very nice to see all of you again. And so this conference is organized on the occasion of Platinum Jubilee of this institute. Institute has completed 75 years. Professor Birbal Sahni, Head of Botany Department of Lucknow University, who immensely contributed in the areas of plant evolution through paleobotanical studies, established the institute in 1946 as Institute of Paleobotany. Professor Birbal Sahni, he died within a very short period of time, and the institute was named after him as Birbal Sahni Institute of Paleobotany. Institute was conceived as a dedicated center for fundamental and applied plant fossil research BSIP scientists and scientific research staff with their unique skills and perspectives, studying the past life of 3.2 billion years to 400 AD to look at what was the Earth like in the past, the various evolutionary processes and biota, to understand plant evolution and climate of the past. Since then, fossil research in BSIP was progressed through many challenging and exciting phases. It has moved from important descriptive phase to integrative applied research aspects. Many new areas such as dendrochronology, archaeobotany, and use of paleobotanical studies in oil and coal exploration were introduced later on in this institute. And there was a general agreement that the institute had performed well in paleobotanical researches, and it was time for a fresh impetus by combining the paleobotanical studies with other allied disciplines. In 2017, the institute evolved from paleobotany to paleosciences. With that, the mandate of the institute has been expanded to widen the scope of paleobotanical researches by combining it with other areas of paleosciences and creating modern facilities to achieve this end. Wide spectrum of issues and themes with diverse perspectives such as dating and correlation of rocks, origin, evolution, and extinction of biota, paleobiography, paleoceanography, paleoclimate, the study of ancient civilization, and in the areas of hydrocarbon exploration, with the help and most modern analytical tools in fossil research, in geology, geochemistry, geomagnetism, TLOSL dating, C14 dating, as well as in paleogenomics. Paleoclimatic studies, which used to be more qualitative in nature earlier, now analyzed for quantitatively also in Cenozoic and Quaternary time period. With the introduction of clamp and coexistence approaches in Cenozoic and recent analog and transfer function analysis, more reliable and accurate climate reconstruction is now being pursued in this institute. The idea to hold a conference on the present theme on Neogene climate evolution and biotic responses in South Asia has been taken into consideration because of presence of vast extents of shivalic sediments and well-preserved biota in these rocks. It is heartening to see the initial response after the first circular, and I wish that after the conference that some thought-provoking research problems will be identified in new areas for future studies. I also wish that some new collaborative research will also taken up after the successful finalization of this conference. I welcome again all of you and all the keynote speakers, Professor Torsten, Bob Spicer, I think Robert Morley, and Karina Horn, and Dr. Professor Rajiv Patnaik, all the keynote speakers and all the participants in this conference. I welcome you again, all of you, and I wish that this conference should be a huge success so that we can plan something new in future. Thank you so much. So I hand over to Torsten again for chairing the session.
Yes, thank you very much, Vandana. In fact, I would like to welcome you for this first session of the meeting, and it is my very pleasure to invite Bob to present his keynote on entitled Interbreeding Stories Hidden Within the Shivalic Archives. Please go ahead, Bob.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me, first of all?
Yes,
yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I've only got the option to present my entire screen, not a part of it. So I'm going to just restart my presentation with an entire screen. First of all, while I'm doing that, happy birthday to BSIP. I'm very pleased to say that I have been associated with BSIP for a number of years now and have seen it develop enormously. So I'm, just a minute. So I'm particularly pleased to be able to present something on the Jubilee. If you can just bear with me a second. Right. I guess you're not seeing what I'm seeing because it's gone to the wrong screen. Just a minute. Start again. I apologize for this. I'm not used to this particular platform. Now, you should be seeing a screen with the title page, yes?
Yes, perfect.
Excellent. Thank you. Right. First of all, then, thank you very much for inviting me to give this keynote. When the invitation came, I thought I would present an introduction to the Siwaliks. So basically, everybody was on the same page. So the talk is going to be divided into three parts. What are the Siwaliks? Secondly, what we can do with the Siwalik archives. That will be a very brief overview of some recent research. It's not going to be comprehensive. I'm hoping that over the next few days, we're going to be learning a lot more new things. And lastly, what we still do not know. So these are some outstanding challenges that I think the Siwaliks can provide. So first of all, what are the Siwaliks? Well, we all know that India has moved northwards and collided with Eurasia. And with any such subduction situation, the subducting load tends to do two things. One, it thickens the crust of the area that it's impacting, in this case, Eurasia, and that creates mountains. But also the subducting slab provides some frictional drag on that impacted continent, in this case, and tends to drag it down. So we have the topographic load produced by mountain building, the subduction load caused by the subducting plate, and that depresses the crust. So that here we end up with basically a hole in the ground into which erosion products of the mountain, in this case Himalaya, fill, and that load also depresses the crust. So we build up a large sedimentary succession recording the history of the growth of the mountain range. This is a very typical foreland basin setting, and that's what we're dealing with the Siwaliks. So here is today's Himalayan foreland basin. Along the Himalayan front, it's occupied by the Ganges River. Over here in the east, we have the Brahmaputra, and in the west, the Indus. So fluvial systems are a major part of foreland basins in land-based situations. And here's the Yarlung Sangpo suture, marking the boundary between the Indian plate and the Eurasian plate. So in front of this suture, we build the mountains, the Himalaya, and in front of the mountains, we develop this accommodation space that accumulates sediments. And of course, we now know that the history of the Tibetan region is one of successive accretions, successive subductions over time, beginning in the early Mesozoic. And unsurprisingly, we also have a succession of foreland basin sediments accumulating adjacent to these various sutures. And so if we understand the fallen basin today, and in the very recent past, the Neogene, south of the Himalaya, this helps us interpret the records that we have of the building of the entire region. Now, the Shivalik group now, as from drilling, we know accommodates some 7 kilometers of Neogene sediments. And these are exposed in a very narrow band along the front here. And the boundary of the Shivaliks to the south is the main frontal thrust, and just to the north of it, the main boundary thrust. Now, there are other thrusts in place, such as the Jwalamukti thrust here, which tends to complicate things. And the action of these various thrusts also complicates the Neogene sediment, so that in some places the succession is actually overturned. Now, this width of the Shivaliks is very narrow. It's just 20 to 25 kilometers in many parts along its length. But it is incredibly long. It's 2,400 kilometers in length, and it's divided into 7 sectors. Going from the west to east, we have the Jammu, the Himachal Pradesh, Uttaranchal, Nepal, Darjeeling, Bhutan, and Arunachal Pradesh. Unfortunately, various mapping exercises means that the formation names dividing up the Shivalik succession differ among the various sectors. Helpfully, based on the work of Pilgrim, 1910, a working methodology seems to now have evolved where we can divide the Shivaliks into an informal lower, middle, and upper succession. And basically, with the lower Shivaliks refer to the middle Miocene, the middle Shivaliks to the late Miocene to early Pliocene, and the upper Shivaliks represent late Pliocene to early Pleistocene sediments. But as we move along the Shivalik succession, the boundaries between these different informal successions, they vary from place to place. So, for example, in Arunachal Pradesh, the boundary between the lower Shivaliks and the middle Shivaliks is around 10.5 million years, and elsewhere it's 6 or 7 million years. Now, my first introduction to the Shivaliks came during filming for a BBC. So just coming back to what was said, here is the river terrace that charcoal came from, and underlying it are the Neogene sediments. Now, when the producer was filming Jean-Philippe, she said to me, rather than you stand around doing nothing, why don't you go and find some fossil leaves? And I complained, saying that's not how you find fossil leaves. You can't find them everywhere. Nevertheless, I wandered off and had a poke around, and lo and behold, there were beautiful fossil leaves with cuticles preserved where I show the arrow there. Now, had I read the literature properly, I would have gone back to 1835, and this paper by Courtley records vast quantities of fossil leaves in the Shivalik range. So one thing I learned from this is that the Shivaliks are incredibly fossil rich. But of course, the movement of India, shown by the blue arrow there, is forcing all of those Neogene sediments up where they're now being eroded and being exposed for study. And that's across the opposite side of the Bagmati River from where we were filming. So what we can do with the Shivalik archives is, first of all, the sedimentary succession comprises mostly non-marine. There have been some mangrove remains and other indicators of marine proximity. And they begin as clays, very fine-grained sediments, and they increase in coarseness going up through the succession. So at the top of the succession, the youngest sediments are mostly conglomerates. And this package of sediments records the growth and erosion history of the Himalaya. And secondly, the depositional environments begin by being mostly fluvial and represent meandering river channels with all of the associated depositional environments such as oxbow lakes, a range of different floodplain facies, including paleosols. And as we go up through the succession, the rivers become more flashy in discharge, we get more braided river systems, and the energy increases as the Himalaya rise. Now, the dating framework at the moment is mostly based on magnetostratigraphy, and magnetostratigraphy always requires accurate tie points, preferably using independent methods. Ideally, that would be absolute dating using radiometric approaches. But in the Sewaliks, a lot of it is based on biostratigraphy, primarily vertebrate biostratigraphy. So it's not ideal, but nevertheless, there is a very well-developed magnetostratigraphic framework for dating the Sewalik succession. Within that succession, we have carbonate nodules in soils, and these provide isotopic data, either oxygen, carbon, etc., and clumped isotopes for estimating temperatures, and they're very useful in elevation studies. But as I said, the Sewaliks are incredibly fossiliferous. They've got a diverse mammal fauna, including primates, numerous invertebrates, fungi, and over 200 different plant megafossil taxa representing some 45 families have been recovered so far. But I would stress that the whole region is still one where there are plenty of research opportunities. And the plant fossils, which I'm going to focus on, provide biogeographical, ecological, and paleoclimate data for a range of evolutionary studies, plant migrations, development of ecosystems, this kind of thing. But they also tell us about monsoon development and paleo elevation, not just in the Himalaya, but also across the entire Tibetan region. So here in yellow, I've indicated some of the localities that I and colleagues I work with have investigated in the Sewalik succession. We'll come across those later. And I've just indicated the Namling site up here that we published on in the early 2000s in the Gangdesi mountain range that existed before the development of the Himalaya. And I'm going to come back to paleo elevation studies a little bit later. Now, as I discovered during that filming exercise, there are some extremely well preserved plant fossils within the Sewalik succession. And these consist of leaves, seeds, fruits, etc., epiphyllous fungi, and with cuticle. And so here's just one example of the of Shorea from the Sewalik succession, just to give you some idea of the quality of the preservation. And to date, the most common families found are Fabaceae, Dipterocarpaceae, Lauraceae, Ananaceae, Euphorbiaceae, Calophyllaceae, Anacardiaceae, Apocynaceae, and Lythraceae, all of which occur in the forests along the Sewalik succession today. So there's a beautiful example of continuity through time, beginning as far as the Sewalik record is concerned in the middle Miocene. And what we can do with that is we can interpret the monsoon evolution. As the Himalaya developed, as global climate changed, we would expect the characteristics of the monsoon systems to change with time. And here's an example that we published on fairly recently. This is a Suricola, and we've got lower Sewalik, middle Sewalik. Typically, the leaves are entire margined with attenuate apices, etc., belonging to a wide range of taxa. And what we can do is look at the leaf traits that are present in these fossils and compare them with leaf traits that we find in modern monsoon adapted vegetation. And what we find is that even going back to the middle Miocene, that these Siwalic successions display, here they're indicated by red dots, I hope you can see those, they display high similarity to the kinds of characters we see in leaves in the modern South Asian monsoon adapted vegetation, showed by the brown dots and within this brownish cloud here. And this is consistent with however we view the physiognomic space. So there's good evidence to suggest that the South Asian monsoon was in place by the Middle Miocene. If we come out of the Siwalic succession and look at Paleogene assemblages in northern India, we can begin to see the first development of the modern South Asian monsoon in the latest Oligocene, but that's not in the Siwalic succession. The Siwalics contain fossil wood. Here's an example, beautifully preserved, and within the fossil wood there's evidence of fungi. So the wood is decaying as it's been transported down slope in the ancient paleo rivers. This is just touching the surface. And one opportunity which I think is still yet to be developed is looking at insects within the Siwalics. Now this example here is not from the Siwalics, it's from the Chotanagpur Plateau, which is very close to the Siwalics. But here we have a gall midge that was found inside a gall on a Pliocene leaf. And along with that, there's other examples where we have fossilized caterpillars. And these all come from this location here, which is very close to the Siwalics. So I would urge any of you who are going out and looking in the Siwalic successions, keep an eye out for this kind of preservation. I'm sure it's there. Now, when we look at the paleoclimate indicated either by CLAMP, looking at the leaf traits, or by the coexistence approach, which many in NECLIME will be familiar with, what we find is that it doesn't matter where we look in the Siwalics, going east to west, or even through time, we find that the basic climate parameters are very consistent. So, for example, if we just look here at the warm month mean temperature, this is the mean value. These are the observed temperatures at the different localities. And you can see here that the standard deviation about the mean indicated by the colored bar is very narrow indeed. And this represents the uncertainty inherent in the CLAMP statistical method. So the observed variation is a lot less than the CLAMP method can detect. Now, this is a bit of a cheat because the warm month mean is right at the upper limit of where CLAMP can reliably detect warm month temperatures, around 28 degrees C. But the similar pattern exists when we look at all these other climate parameters like mean annual temperature, maximum temperature of the coldest month, minimum temperature of the warmest month, the wet bulb temperature, or the cold month mean. So we have a remarkably stable in terms of temperature regime. To a large extent, this also applies to a number of other climate variables, including rainfall and humidity, but we do see rainfall changes as the monsoon waxes and wanes in terms of intensity. Now, we have to be a bit careful when we look in the Himalaya. Here we have the Siwalic succession, which we know must have been deposited close to sea level, probably less than 200 meters, which is the average elevation of the modern Ganges floodplain. But within the lower or lesser Himalaya, we also have places like Lukandol and Kalamati, which actually represent perched basins. such as happening here, as this region is being raised through the movement of India coming northwards. We develop basins which then infill with sediment. And this is quite useful because we can track the elevation change over the whole succession, including in the highest parts of the Himalaya. You notice I've got Ladakh here. There's a very interesting flora here, but how this fits into the main scheme of things is a bit unclear at the moment. One of the earliest paleoelevation studies that was done was in Namling. Namling is perched on the ancient Gandhisi highland, which formed the mountain belt along the southern flank of Eurasia before the Himalaya developed. And you can see here that the leaves from Namling all have well-developed teeth, indicative of a cool, temperate environment, whereas our leaves from the Siwaliks are almost entirely entire-margined, with totally different characters. So we quantified the evolution of the Gandhisi, or like at least the height of the Gandhisi at 15 million years, and that's been subsequently verified by isotopic studies. And what we've learned in the last 3 or 4 years, basically, is that the evolution of the Tibetan region is far more complicated than just simply raising a plateau through time. So here in the Middle Eocene, we have a deep valley with the Gandhisi to the south and the Tangula to the north, with the Himalaya just beginning to develop. But by the Middle Miocene, when we're developing our Siwalik succession, we've raised this valley somewhat, and we are still trying to quantify exactly what the height of this valley was in the Middle Miocene. And then, of course, in recent, it's much higher and drier because we've got the further development of the Himalaya and the Himalayan rain shadow. But what we can do before we get too carried away with all of these quantifications of surface height is we need to test them. And in the modern high Himalaya, we have a number of extensional basins. Here's the Kola Basin, we have the Jirion Basin, and the Zada Basin. And some of you will have seen this in a previous presentation that I gave. We've looked at the Zada or Zander Basin, and this is basically a late Miocene through to basically present depositional basin, western high Himalaya, south of the Yarlung Tsangpo Sucha, and it is magnetostratigraphically dated, and here is our fossil assemblage at roughly 3.5, 3.6 million years. And when we look at the leaves, they tend to be small, very similar to the leaves we find in the modern Zada Basin, which is a sort of semi-desert, very arid setting. And this is, again, many of the taxa are similar to those of the present. And what we've done in paleoclimate or paleoelevation studies for a long time is use lapse rates, thermal lapse rates, which is basically the reduction in temperature as you go higher up a mountain. Many people have used global free air lapse rates, which are totally inappropriate because plants don't float around in the atmosphere, they're stuck on the surface. So we need to use terrestrial lapse rates, which are much more complicated. And the, as it were, lazy condition is that we've all used dry bulb temperature lapse rates. But when we do a modeling exercise, we find that the dry bulb temperatures, here indicated for a variety of different topographic scenarios, are all in the solid symbols. Their ability to predict the actual scenario, which is in the model, which is indicated by the red star down here, is appalling. It's a complete mess. They are useless. The best approximation we have to reproducing the topography in the model is given by the springtime dry bulb temperatures, temperature lapse rates, but even these are quite poor. But when we use wet bulb, irrespective of season, we get a very close approximation to the topography which is set within the model. So that led us to try and do some comparative studies using the Zander Basin as an ideal setting because it's a young basin. We know what the present situation is, and we have isotope work, prior isotope work of Saylor and Huntington, and they came up with an answer which suggested that the Zander Basin in the late Miocene, Pliocene was between 5 and 6 kilometers high. Other work based on coexistence approach, based on palynology and dry bulb lapse rates, give much lower paleo elevations for the same succession, again using the Siwaliks as a sea level baseline datum. So they're down here. And somewhere in between is work by Huang et al., who used a modified clamp approach, and these green dots, which is the elevation reconstructed using wet bulb terrestrial lapse rates. So you can see these are very close to one another, and also they all fit within the modern elevation of the Zander Basin. Up here, the blue dots represent the moist enthalpy reconstruction using clamp, and they tend to match the isotopes. So the question is, which is correct? Well, given that these are extensional basins, we cannot argue that these have been uplifted. So it's highly unlikely that these lower elevations as recently as the Pliocene are valid. What is more likely is that we're dealing with elevations between 4 to 6 kilometers. But why do we get this difference between the wet bulb lapse rate approach and the moist enthalpy approach and the isotopes or clamp using a different calibration? When we use moist enthalpy in a model, and we set a model to have a particular topography, here we've got Tibet with a big valley in the middle Miocene, middle Eocene. Moist enthalpy difference between what's observed at surface and what's observed at sea level reproduces the orography given to the model extremely well. And even when we change Tibet to a plateau, it reproduces that as well. So we've got high confidence in moist enthalpy as being potentially a very good tool. That's been used a long time. But COVID has had its advantages. Instead of running around in the field doing exciting field work, we've been stuck in front of our desks. And so I decided to do a desk exercise using Google Earth. And here we have our Siwalik localities going along the east to west along the front. And what I decided to do was have artificial transects going north from each of these sites, going from the Siwalik location, which in most cases is a few hundred meters above sea level, up to 5,000 meters where possible, to see if there's any systematic variation in the ability of moist enthalpy to reproduce what we see today in terms of the topography. And this is the result. The blue indicates the actual difference between the Siwalik locality where we start doing the transect and the peak height in the mountains available to us along that transect. So here it's just over 4 kilometers. When we use the formula that was published by Forrest et al. In 1995 to estimate height using the difference in moist enthalpy between low sea level and moist enthalpy at elevation divided by the acceleration due to gravity, that's the standard formula that we use. When we use that, we find that the formula delivers, instead of being an elevation of just over 4 kilometers, it's almost 6 for this particular locality. And the overestimation is true all the way along east to west along the Siwaliks. But the proportional difference, it remains fairly constant. So this just reflects, this increase here just reflects the general increase in the transect height that we tend to find along the Siwaliks. We don't know why this is the case. It may be due to the gridding process, which is used to interpolate the climate data, the moist enthalpy at these different places along the transects, but we don't know yet. This is worth investigating. But that pattern is very similar to what we observed in terms of the difference between the wet bulb and the moist enthalpy in the Zander Basin. I'm now going to show you some work that was done earlier this year by our colleagues in Sichuan-Bana, where they went and to recollect some plant localities first discovered and published on in 1973 by Zhu et al. On Mount Shishapangma. So here we have the party setting off up to somewhere up here. The original fossils, Quercus semicarpifolia, were found somewhere above 5,000 meters, according to the publication. But although they were called Pliocene, there was no secure date. The context was never properly recorded. So Su Tao and colleagues set off and went up the mountain earlier this year. There's Su Tao here. They're at around 5,600 meters, where they found the fossil leaves. So it's quite important for us to try and understand the use of things like wet bulb, because there will never be enough plant material there to do a clamp analysis and derive moist enthalpy, but we may be able to estimate elevation using wet bulb approach and coexistence type approaches. So what we still don't know. The fossil archives of the Siwaliks are still understudied. There's huge potential out there to reveal more about the regional biodiversity, monsoon evolution, and of course, orogenic development of the entire region. The dating framework depends on magnetostratigraphy. And as I said earlier, this generally lacks absolute dating. It would be wonderful to find ash horizons within the Siwaliks that we can use as absolute tie points. I would have a lot more confidence in the magnetostratigraphy if that were the case. We also need a better understanding of the conditions under which our isotopic carriers in the Siwaliks form, these nodules, for example. They're influenced by the meteoric water, that's current rainfall, but they're also influenced by water in the groundwater system. And we don't know how long that's been there, what the elevational range it's derived from, or even the contribution from glacial meltwater, which of course can average isotopic compositions going back thousands of years. And our knowledge of the atmospheric properties as air passes up the Himalayan front is still very patchy. We've got very low density of on-the-ground measurements. There's issues with how we grid climate data to get our estimates of things like moist enthalpy in these complex terrains. And we have a general lack of understanding of mesoscale atmospheric dynamics under monsoon conditions against this massive mountain front that we have represented by the Himalaya. So I think I'm going to stop there. I've got no idea of time because it's taken over my entire computer, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bob, for this great overview over these Siwaliks and their potential for the geosciences. Yes, in fact, we have plenty of time for discussion. We are early in the schedule, so please go ahead.
For once, I've managed to keep the time.
The problem is that I might not see raised hands here in my version.
I don't know how you do that in this. Maybe somebody in BSIP knows how to indicate questions.
Bob, I have a question. Actually,
Yeah.
hello, can you hear?
Yes, I can.
Yes.
What do you think about the expansion of grasses in the Himalayan foreland basin during the Neogene? Because there is a huge asynchronality, you can say. In Western Himalaya, the grasses expanded, but in the Eastern Himalaya, they didn't. So this is really very challenging to understand the expansion of grasses in the whole Shivalik. Yes, please.
Yeah, no, I would absolutely agree with you. I mean, one thing I didn't touch on is the evolution of the present very strong rainfall differential between the Western Himalaya and the Eastern Himalaya. And of course, that will be associated with changes in vegetation. We do know that in the Paleogene and going into the early Neogene, we have evidence of a very forested Western Himalayan fallen basin, and that gradually, or say gradually, maybe quite sudden, I'm not sure, we have a drying and a development of this more open grassland system. Now, of course, we can use things like phytoliths to understand this, but it's difficult because of taphonomic reasons. I'll give you an example. We're working on a paper at the moment from central Tibet, and CLAMP suggests quite a humid environment, high rainfall, and the flora is very diverse in broad-leaved taxa, woody taxa, enough to do a CLAMP analysis, and we end up with a seasonal rainfall regime for this system. The modeling actually indicates a bimodal seasonal variation in rainfall, so there's 2 wet seasons, not just 1. And yet this flora also has an abundance of grass phytoliths. So there has been a lot of discussion about whether this represents a savanna environment. CLAMP doesn't suggest a savanna environment. It's too wet, but then we know CLAMP tends to be biased towards vegetation growing around a water body because that's where the leaves get preserved. So our view of the climate is skewed by the preservational process, and yet not skewed if rivers are bringing in grass phytoliths from the surrounding countryside. So I'm actually thinking that over the next 5 to 10 years, we are going to be doing an awful lot more research on the evolution of grassland systems in Asia that up to now have been largely overlooked. Partly, I think, because in normal pollen preps, we dissolve all the grass phytoliths, and so we think there are no grasses there. Does that help?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, thank you.
More questions? I still have problems. I think my system does not support this raised hand function, which should be also included in the Meet Google. But you have to help me somehow to see if someone has a question here.
Gaurav, do you know how this system works for people to indicate questions? Are you seeing a screen?
They can put their if anybody has any query, they can put in that chat box down below.
All right.
Chat.
So I open the chat box. Yeah, maybe I would have a question concerning the stability of Miocene climate, or even of Miocene Pliocene climate, as you mentioned. Could this be related to this mountain, high mountain chain to the north, which somehow protects the area from northerly atmospheric input?
Yeah. As you know, there's been a lot of discussion, mostly in the modeling community, about the role of the Himalaya in controlling northerly airflow to India, particularly northwestern India and Pakistan, because that's where you get the greatest temperature anomaly today. It used to be thought that it was over Tibet, but actually it's not. It's over that northwestern subcontinent region. And so the height of the Himalaya and the Gangdesi before it is absolutely critical to understanding the evolution of the South Asian monsoon in its present form. I think we need to do a lot more work to try and tease out the issues surrounding rainfall and humidity. As you know, I'm quite a big fan of vapor pressure deficit because from a plant perspective, the leaves are going to be much more sensitive to atmospheric humidity than they are rainfall. Because if there's enough groundwater, the leaves particularly don't care whether it's raining or not. They're just worried about whether the roots have got water. This doesn't apply to the coexistence approach, where we're looking at the rainfall parameters as a group of taxa. And so I think the coexistence approach applied is going to give us much better ideas of rainfall changes during this critical period, and the rainfall change will be a factor of which way the winds are blowing at any one time, and the effect of the Himalaya on atmospheric circulation generally. So there's a lot more work to be done. I think the modelers need to start using more realistic reconstructions of topography if they're going to get meaningful outcomes. But again, that we're looking here at another 5 to 10 years of modeling using higher spatial resolution models with improved cloud physics, I think, is the key.
So much to do for the young colleagues.
You and I, Torsten, I don't think are going to see this all playing out. It's down to our younger colleagues to do that.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. So do we have any? I can see these in-call messages in the chat. If you have a question, please let me know.
While they're doing that, I apologize for the lack of sound. Normally the sound comes through, at least it does on Zoom where I've shown videos, but obviously there is a setting which I didn't set. So my apologies for that, but I hope you got my sort of overview commentary, made some sense of it anyway.
Yes, I see that Basanta Adhikari has a question, please.
Yes, thanks. Thanks, Robert, for your outstanding overview. My question is that, when you talk about the paleo altitude reconstruction based on this taxa and biota, I will try to correlate with this paleoaltimetry based on oxygen isotope that have people done here in the Himalayas?
Broadly speaking, when we looked at the Zander Basin, the oxygen isotope work done by name's gone out of my head. Huntington is the most recent worker on this. The oxygen isotope and the moist enthalpy approach give you identical results, and this is also true for the Namling site in the mid-Miocene. So there's high confidence that those two approaches in the Himalayan setting will give you the same result. The question I ask is, it might be the same result, but is it the right result? Does it reflect ancient reality? And this is where we're testing this new wet bulb terrestrial lapse rate approach. And when I looked at the modern Himalaya, there was a tendency for the moist enthalpy approach to overestimate the elevation by about 1.2 kilometers over a 5-kilometer elevational difference. And that is, I wouldn't say it's worrying, it's interesting. Irrespective of the elevational range, we are getting a consistent overestimation. So all the existing work that we have across Tibet shows relative height changes. There's no change to the absolute story, but there may be a change to determine the actual surface height, which of course we need to know in our modeling reconstructions. So why are we getting this overestimation of moist enthalpy? That's a question for us to try and tackle. Why is moist enthalpy and isotopes giving you the same result? Maybe it's got something to do with the assumptions of isotopic lapse rates that needs to be investigated, because we are still using assumptions. And anybody who's got involved in isotope paleoaltimetry realizes there are a huge number of assumptions built one upon the other. And when we've been exploring the wet bulb and trying to relate these to soil temperatures, you might think that soil surface acts like a wet bulb thermometer in as much as it's evaporating moisture, so it's cooling, but at the same time it's absorbing more energy than the air, so it's warming more than the air. It becomes incredibly complicated to actually understand what an in-soil temperature means in terms of seasonal variations in air temperature. There's a huge amount of work to be done here. And I can see that there's at least 20 PhD projects that can be done. So I'm not pretending that any of the results we have so far are absolute in terms of representing past reality in all its glory, but I am saying that these are very interesting avenues to continue pursuing.
Thank you very much.
I've got a question written in the chat box thing. Torsten.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. The record of animal fossils from the eastern Himalaya is meager. What could be the reason? Is it taphonomic bias? Well, if you mean vertebrates, there is likely to be a strong taphonomic bias, because in the very wet, very organic rich successions that we have in the eastern Sivalics, they tend to be much more acidic than the conditions in the west, and of course that is not good for preserving bone material. If you mean invertebrates like insects, well, then I point you to the Chotanagpur Plateau succession, where we have insect preservation in ordinary compression fossils. Okay, the circumstances there are quite special. It's very rapid deposition in an anoxic setting in a lake, but there's no reason why those kinds of settings do not occur within the Sivalics. It's a question of looking. So I think on the one hand, there is likely to be a taphonomic bias against vertebrates in the eastern Sivalics, but that may well enhance the preservation of other animal fossils, like those with chitinous exoskeletons like insects. My view.
Okay, thank you, Bob. I can't see any more comments or questions here, so maybe we should go on.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thanks again, Bob. So it's my pleasure to invite Yoshida Koki for the next talk. entitled Mineralogical Comparison between Himalayan River Sands and Bengal Fan Deposits recovered in IODP Expedition 354. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chairman. At first, I'd like to say thank you very much for giving this opportunity to make a presentation like this. Today, I'd like to talk about the heavy minerals in the Himalayan River and Bengal Fan deposit. Just a moment, please. Yeah. Yes, this is my presentation, and the title is Mineralogical Comparison between Himalayan River Sand and Bengal Fan Deposit recovered in IODP Expedition 354. And at first, I'd like to introduce the Himalayan, the relationship between the Himalaya and Bengal Fan. I think already you know such things. The Bengal Fan has the potential to present detailed record of erosion history, links between the climate change and techniques in Himalayan and Tibetan origin. To compare with the Bengal Fan deposit recovered at U1451 site of IODP expedition, we examined the heavy mineral assemblage and chemical composition of specific minerals. The IODP expedition 354 drilled in mid-fan area of the Bengal Fan and recovered the long core from 17 MA to present. The depositional age was dated by calcareous nanoplankton and foraminifers. This figure shows the locality of the drilling site of Bengal Fan. And next, I'd like to introduce the heavy mineral analysis. Heavy mineral is a mineral with a density that is greater than 2.8 grams per centimeter tree. Heavy mineral assemblage shows the characteristic of source rocks and provenance. In this analysis, we used durable minerals against weathering and diagenetic destruction using microscope and microprobe. I'd like to introduce several kinds of heavy minerals in Bengal Fan deposit. At first, tourmaline and garnet and sterolite and anthrol, sillimanite and kyanite. And today, I'd like to talk about the chemical composition of anthrol like this. The essential question is, where did the heavy mineral come from? Bengal Fan have two big river sources. One is a Brahmaputra River and another is Ganges River. We have examined heavy mineral assemblage in Indian rivers, especially the chemical composition of the detrital unfolds in the recent bedrock sediment in Himalayan rivers. It's focused on this study. Before that, we examined the heavy minerals in the Kaligandaki River in central Nepal. The locality is here. And to clarify the relationship between source rocks and the heavy mineral assemblage. This is a photograph of the Kaligandaki River in central Nepal. The Kaligandaki River flows main Himalayan geological belt in central Nepal. I think already you know the main bodies of the Himalayan mountain consist of Lesser Himalaya, High Himalaya crystal trees, and Techian Himalaya. such Kaligan River flows the main Himalayan geological bodies, and small rivers flowing into the Kaligan River show the characteristic mineral assemblage reflecting those rocks in the catchment. So I like to show the sampling method. The bedrock sediment was taken from the small rivers flowing into the Kaligan River. The heavy minerals were separated by heavy liquid and mounted by standard method of making thin section. 150 to 200 grains were identified in each sample using by microprobe and microscope. Recently, the geological map published by Parsons et al. 2016. They divided the Himalayan mountain belt from the south, Lesser Himalaya, and the lower part of Greater Himalayan sequence, and the upper part of Greater Himalayan sequence, and Ketchian Himalaya. So this is the result of our heavy mineral analysis. You can see the antball and the pyroxene, and sometimes epidote grains are prevailed in the high temperature, high grade metamorphic rocks consist of the upper part of Greater Himalayan sequence. And antball and hematite are detected in the lower part of the Greater Himalaya sequence and the Lesser Himalaya sequence. And I like to show the chemical composition of the detrital antball on the two-axis plot consists of TiO2 and Al. And this diagram shows the clear two clusters consist of upper Greater Himalayan sequence and the lower Greater Himalayan sequence and LHS. This diagram suggests you can easily identify the upper Greater Himalayan sequence and lower Greater Himalayan sequence using by chemical composition of antball. And I like to show the variety of air content in antball composition. In the right side, showing the upper Greater Himalayan sequence, and such antball have a relatively narrow range of air content. But left side, lower Greater Himalayan sequence suggests the wide variety of air content of detrital antball. Next, I like to show the sampling point of heavy mineral assemblage in the eastern tributary of the Brahmaputra River. Of course, you know the upstream of the Brahmaputra River consists of several tributaries like Shan River and Diban River, Lohit River, and Neogene rivers. This is the result of heavy mineral assemblage of these rivers. And you can see the composition consists of antball and pyroxene, and sometimes hematite. So it means the main source of these sediments were Greater Himalayan sequence and Lesser Himalayas. So, and that is maybe a mixture of the Greater Himalaya and Lesser Himalaya sequences. And I like to show the antball composition. And yes, Shan River, in the Shan River around here, Shan River shows a wide variety of the air content of the detrital antball composition, but no Neogene River sample suggests relatively narrow range of the air content. But basically, these river sediment shows a wide variety. Next, I like to show the heavy mineral analysis in Bengal farm. The method is the sandy sediment was taken every 10-meter depth for heavy mineral assemblage. The mineral was separated by heavy liquid and identified by microscope. And this is the result. And you can see sedimentary crumb of the drilled core in the midpoint area of Bengal farm. And the bottom is yes, very old, the 43 MA, but this is just limestone. And Bengal farm deposit started from about 18 MA, and we recovered the succession of the drilling core to present. And you can see little bit small characters that show the age of deposition. The result of heavy mineral assemblage shows around 17 MA. The evident grains are prevailed. And around 12 MA, I4 grains are increased. And around 9 and finally 7 MA, I4 grains are very prepared. And also, I like to focus the chemical composition of the detrital I4 using AL content in the composition. And around the 17 MA, of course, we can detect the detritus from upper greater Himalayan sequence, but the amount is very, very small. And after 12 MA, there are wide variety of the I4 are produced and reach to the Bengal farm. And around 7 MA, a huge amount of detritus from upper part of greater Himalayan sequence were derived to the Bengal farm. About the dechippering of the Bengal farm deposit, unfortunately, the contribution of the Brahmaputra River to the Bengal farm is not clear at this moment because of lack of Ganges River data. So I need collaboration with you. And weathering history of the Himalayan record is Bengal farm deposit shows below like this. And around 17 MA, Himalayan detritus lead to the recent midpoint area, but the main source was the Indian continent. After 12 MA, upper and lower greater Himalayan sequence and lesser Himalaya derived the huge amount of detritus. And after 7 MA, upper greater Himalayan sequence produced a large amount of detritus. Okay, this is my conclusion. So the problem of my study is lacking of the Ganges River deposit, and also I don't have the sand sample around the Indian continent, and the collaboration is very, very welcome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for this nice story from the Bengal fan enlightening maybe the uplift history of the Himalayan in the area. We have time for questions, please.
Austin,
Yes.
I have a question. I put it in the chat, or at least I signaled that I need. would like a question. I've just discovered the hand. I don't know if that works.
Yes, now I can see in fact that you raised the hand. Yes, fantastic. Yes, please go ahead, Bob.
Okay. The Brahmaputra River, of course, upstream is called the Sangpo in southern Tibet. And that is transporting materials not just from the Himalaya, but also from the ancient Gangdesi. What do you, I mean, I didn't see a reference to the ancient Gangdesi as being a contributor. What do you know about the mineralogy there that would be useful to you, and what are you lacking that you need to know?
Thank you very much. It's a great question. Unfortunately, our data set from the upstream of Brahmaputra River doesn't show the contribution of the Tibetan Plateau, and that is a reason why. Yes, heavy mineral analysis is usually used the medium and coarser sand grains, and it means most of the sediment may be come from around the deposition site, and upstream of the Brahmaputra River in Tibetan territory, that is maybe far from the sampling site. If I try to examine the finer grained material in the bedrock sediment and suspension load sediment of the river water, I can detect the contribution of the finer provenance from the Tibetan territory. Unfortunately, that is the limit of my my heavy mineral analysis.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
More questions, please.
Yeah, I have one question.
Yeah, please.
Thank you, Professor Asida, for your interesting presentation. I particularly have an interest on Kaligandaki. Although these the sediment, the heavy mineral that I'm talking is not related with Greater Himalayan sequence, but in Neogene, this Thakola graben, I found chromispinel, towards the plains of chromispinel, and then I had a really hard time to locate the provenance of those heavy minerals, and then I thought that it would be related with the Indus Sangpo, something which are done and transported by aerial transport or something like that. So, do you have any comments on that? It is related with you?
Thank you very much. Great information and great questions. Of course, I know the existence of chromispinel in the Kaligandaki River sediment, but unfortunately, I cannot detect the source rocks. And I have several experiences to analyze the chromispinel composition of the Kaligandaki River. It means the chromispinel was derived from the ultramorphic rocks like maybe serpentine and not basalt. But we cannot detect the distribution of the serpentine around the Kaligandaki River catchment. Of course, Thakola graben. But maybe yes, some serpentine body or metamorphosed ultramorphic rocks are distributed around the catchment of Kaligandaki. So that is my comment.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. More questions? We would have time. I do not see any raised hands or further comments. So thank you very much again.
Thank you very much.
And the next talk would take us to the higher mountains now. And I would ask Basanta Adhikari to present palynological evidence for the Neogene environmental change of the Takola Graben in Nepal. Please.
Wait, so can you see my slide and can you hear me?
Yes, seems perfect.
Okay, thank you. Wonderful presentation by Robert and Professor Yasuda. So now I'll take you the high mountain Asia on Takola Graben of central Nepal. And this work was done by myself and Professor Podial. He's also here. And so we process this sample in the University of Vienna. I'll talk later on. So basically when you, sorry, I don't know what happened. Just a minute. Okay, so if you see here, this is the geology of Nepal, and then you can see this is the Takola Graben, and many of us know it is, is a half graben because we have only clear western bounding fault. So I interpret this as a half graben, and many other authors also represent as a half graben. So in this graben, if you look this Neogene sediments, which the age ranges from 11 and then up to 2 million years, and then these Takola Graben is divided into basically two formation, the basal Tetang formation and then the Takola formation, and which has angular unconformity about 5 degrees and has 2 million years depositional gap. So here you can see this is the Tetang a little bit, and then you have a whole Takola formation. The sediments are conglomerates, sandstone, siltstone, and fine lacustrine deposits up to the debris or braided river channel environment. So if we look closely, the cross section of this graben, you can see this western bounding fault. Some people say Takola fault, some people say Dagarjung fault. So name, it doesn't matter, but what you can see here is the bottom layer, which is Tetang formation, and then you have angular unconformity overlain by this Takola formation, and the Kaligantika river is just eroding all the materials down to the Ganga Basin. So basically, when you see these two formations, then you can easily absorb the lacustrine deposits where we find some kind of palynological evidences, and previous researchers also has done some work, and then we try to do this work again back in 2006, 7, and 8, and then we took the sample. If you look this, the succession here, so these are the limestone, which are Palestine limestone of Tetang formation, and this the red line is unconformity, and then you have a Takola formation of Miocene and Pliocene. And if you look at another section, this is the Cretaceous Chuk formation, and this is the Tetang formation, and then you have unconformity again, and then the Takola formation. So this, spectacular exposure provides you the clear understanding how these sedimentary layers were deposited during the formation of Takola graben. If you look closely, then we try to find out these pollens and the plant fossil in different layers from central portion of the graben to the proximal part or distal part. And then you see here only 3 locations contain pollen. And here you can see some of these layers in large form, where you can see this black layer where we found some pollen for the analysis. Although the pollens are not widespread, or we didn't find the large number of pollens in different vertical layers, so we couldn't do the paleoclimate analysis on a sequential way, but we tried to do some scanning electron microscope to understand the distribution of plants on that time during the formation of this graben. So this is the procedure basically that we followed, developed by Ferguson et al. In 2007. And we processed this sample in the Department of Sedimentology and Geodynamics, the University of Vienna, Austria, in paleobotany lab there. And I think almost all of us know the procedure, so I'm not going to discuss in detail. But what is important here, the process might be different, but the output should be the pollen that we can process or understand in scanning electron microscope or light microscopy. So these are some electron microscope photographs that we have taken. For example, this is the light microscopy, and then enlarge in SEM, and then to understand the morphological parameters of different pollen. So here you can see different grains, and then also other grains with a very clear images and this morphological differences. And then we could identify these pollen grains based on their morphology. And so these are some more scanning. And I would say that this is the first time that we have done this scanning electron microscope from the Takola graben. So in 1984, some previous researchers have done, but they did only light microscopy. So we confirm those pollens using these high, sophisticated techniques. And so these are some representatives, the scanning electron photographs. And then, we can discuss more on, and Professor Paudial is also here because he's good on these pollen grains, and he helped me identifying and processing these samples during my early stage of my career during my PhD. So these are the very interesting and clear pictures, and so this is the record that we had in the high altitude in a Takola graben of this Himalayan belt. So if we look the distribution of these pollen, you can see the different percentage of different genera and family and species. Here you can see from Biotic, Acer, Alnus, Artemisia, Betula, Plantago, Corcus. So but the highest percentage is like Composite, which is 15%, and Oleaceae is 11%. So this is the overall variation of pollen in that region, which shows the different distribution and different depositional environment during that time. And if we just try to divide grassland and temperate forest taxa, where you can see these 44 and 56%, this is the overview of our results that we found during our study. And so, and if you see from the Takola, So we reported that 19 families and the genera of the plants with the help of light and scanning electron microscope. So non-armolier pollen, which is 90%, and then the arboreal 10%, shows the most of the pollen grains are deposited in these sediments, which are transported from the surrounding environment, except some coniferous pollen. So the presence of evergreen, subtropical, and temperate deciduous broadleaf forest, for example, quercus, betula, juglans, ulnas, and needle-lipped element like pinus and suga, or high-altitude taxa like Piscia and Avis, with some Artemisia, Canopodaceae, Poaceae, and Rosaceae, so the mixed pollen assemblies of that region of the Himalayas. So the pollen grains of the conifer plant dominates the upper horizon of Tetang Formation, and this oxygen isotope study confirmed that altitude was higher during the depositional time. It, like I already explained, 11 to 9.6 million years. Then the present time, which was done on the paleoaltimetry based on oxygen isotope, and then the upliftment of the Himalaya also acted as the topographic barrier and exert an intense effect upon the atmospheric circulation, so that more steppe vegetation like Artemisia, Canopodaceae were dominated during the sediment deposition. So these are the some interpretation from our study, because as I told you that we didn't have the sequential pollen, and so this is the only distribution, and so we only wanted to explain the reported pollen from that area. So that is, thank you very much. This is the beautiful Thakola Graben. Background is Nilgiri. We are looking south. So I welcome you to work together in this beautiful Forbidden Valley. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for showing this nice and very well preserved materials from from Nepal. Now we have time for questions, please. Yes, Bob, please.
Yeah, thank you. I enjoyed that talk very much. Now I know why you wanted to ask the question about paleoaltimetry. You're getting a higher than present elevation, and you're also in an extensional basin. So you would expect that over time the land surface may be to decrease. So it's a very similar situation to the Zander Basin. I have no specific question other than perhaps we should do some collaboration at some point. Do you think?
Of course. I always work in collaboration, and Professor Paudel also is here. He's already working with you, so I mean, absolutely, we enjoy.
Yeah, no, I think this is a very interesting issue about whether or not there has really been a reduction in height, or whether the methodologies are overestimating past height. And at the moment, we just don't know the answer. But thank you very much for a really interesting talk.
No, I agree with you. That's why I asked you the question, because when I did the paleoaltimetry, and then I took the real-time location of present time, and then compare. Somewhere you see 1,000 or 1,200 meters subsidence, and which is not, I think, it's not in real. So I suppose there's something in the paleoaltimetry calculation also. That's why I wanted to discuss with you before.
Well, the isotope paleoaltimetry in the Zander Basin and in the Namling setting also suggests perhaps a 1 kilometer reduction. Now, middle Miocene to present, no big deal, but Pliocene to present 1 kilometer reduction, then it begins to be problematic. I thought you were going to say that the pollen indicated a much lower elevation because you're getting a lot of material wafted up from lower elevations, which is the standard thing. So when I just think it's worth having a discussion about these paleoaltimetric methods and ultimately comparing the Zander Basin situation with the Thakola Graben situation.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
More questions? It always takes a while until this window indicating raised hands pops up, so I have to wait if I see messages, something like that. Yeah, well, maybe. Yes, Marianne?
Greetings from Bratislava. I have only very short questions because I like very much your presentation, and I'm curious if you did this single grain method alone, because it's very time consuming, as we know. How did you solve this? How did you do this? Did you apply Zetter method as well?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
It's very time consuming, I believe. It's not easy job.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, but I mean, it's really interesting to see these different possibilities to address paleo-altitudinal settings, isn't it? I mean, from the pollen alone, it's notoriously difficult to derive paleo-altitude from the presence of any conifer taxa, which are presently distributed at high altitudes, but as well as in the mid altitudes, isn't it? So it's a good idea to cooperate here and in order to get a couple of ideas. Well,
Yes,
thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
And now we come to the last talk of this part of the session. And I would like to invite Amit Ghosh to present signature of high productivity during the Teutonia, evidence from biosiliceous microfossils from the Northeast Indian Ocean. So it takes us back to the marine part again.
Good afternoon to everybody. First of all, let me know whether I am audible or not. I am audible?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Can you see my slide?
Yes, full screen, please.
Okay. Is it okay? Is it okay?
Full screen.
Full
Yes,
screen.
it's fine.
Okay. So I am now presenting some data from the offshore and onshore sediments, that is from the Teutonian of Northeast Indian Ocean, and the study is basically based on biosiliceous microfossils. And along with me, some of my students, some of my colleagues are there who actually helped me to generate the data itself. And as you all know that marine microfossils, which are biosiliceous, can be very important to decipher the productivity. Okay, and these microfossils are in fact represented by diatoms, silicoflagellates, and your radiolarians, etc. Okay, so coming to the presentation and the study area. This is basically the study area, that is the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Huh? I have changed the slide. Is it okay?
No, Dr. Gosha, in principle, I cannot see any changes in,
Okay.
Yes, now it seems to work.
Okay, is it okay?
Yeah,
No?
now it changed, yes. Now
Okay.
we see the
Okay.
study area.
So basically this is the study area.
Dr. Ghosh, your slides are changing, but they are not on full screen.
It is on the full screen mode actually. Let me check it out.
Okay.
Exactly. Right, just a minute. Is it okay now?
Yes.
Perfect.
It's perfect now?
Yes.
Okay. So basically this is the study area which is showing that Bay of Bengal, okay, and the Andaman and Nicobar group of islands. And along with this, the study has been taken from NGHP 0117A core, that is from National Gas Hydrate Project core. And one of my students is working over here. And another work that is from the onshore, that is from the Neil Island, that has been taken into consideration for this study. So coming to the offshore and onshore sequences, the onshore sequences, basically we have taken the slice of the Tortonian, which is divided into 3 lithostratigraphic units. Lithostratigraphic subunit is 1C, 1B, and 1A. Okay, these are the 3, and the total depth is around 691 MBSF. So this sequence is totally rich in diatom, sponge spicules, nanofossils, ooze, and one of my students will be presenting her data on that particular core after some time, and along with radiolarians, right? And the onshore sequence, that is from the Neil Island, this is about 10 to 12 meter thick sequence, and this is also in fact dominated by calcareous marstone, nanoforum chalk, recent coral racks, and alluvium, and this is from the onshore side. Now coming to the next slide, this is the biosiliceous microfossil events that is derived from the offshore sequence. And if you see here, this is the radiolarian events, because radiolarians are very good in deciphering the age of the sequence or age of the sediments, like your nanofossils. Here you can see Didymocytrus laticona's evolutionary transitional form with Didymocytrus penultima form. Along with Didymocytrus penultima, it is continuing, and here you will find Stichocoris delmontensis and Formostrichoratus doliolum zone. This is the radiolarian zone, and the diatom zones which have been found here is Actinocyclus ellipticus, affirmative lanceolata, and Actinocyclus ellipticus var japonica. And here the sequence is somewhat different. You will find from here the Alveus marinus zone, that is previously known as Nischia marina, and Fragiliopsis reynoldi zone, that was known earlier as Nischia reynoldi. Coming to the onshore side, in the onshore side, you will find here that we have found the RN7 and RN8 zone, which are demarcated by evolutionary transition from Didymocytrus antepenultima to Didymocytrus penultima zone. And apart from that, the diatom zones which are derived from here are Actinocyclus ellipticus, affirmative lanceolata, and Actinocyclus ellipticus, variety japonica. In addition, we have Alveus marinus zone, which was previous Nischia marina zone, and Fragiliopsis reynoldi zone, that is Nischia reynoldi zone. Though the sequence of the onshore is very, very small, we have found all the relevant events which are found also here, as well as in the offshore. So coming to the significant diatom taxa from the offshore, I am just simply not repeating the taxa. That is Aspedia nodulifera. This is Aspedia again nodulifera, affirmative cyclopa, Aspedia tabularis, and Cossinodiscus radiators, and so on and so forth. I am not going to the taxonomic details of these taxa. Coming to the next, that is the diatom taxa from the onshore. Here also we find Aspedia nodulifera, Cossinodiscus radiators, Cocconis pellucidus, Actinocyclus ellipticus, and so on and so forth. But the most important thing you just notice here, that is the presence of Thalassionema nischioides, Thalassiostris longissima. Why these are significant, I am coming to that point later on. The significant radiolarian taxa from the offshore and onshore sediments, I'm just showing you the representative forms: Diatrus hugesi, Didymocytrus laticonus, Didymocytrus antipenultima, Didymocytrus penultima, Stichocoris delmontensis, and so on and so forth. And some from the onshore also, the same forms are there: Didymocytrus penultima and Formostrichoides doliolum and Stichocoris delmontensis. These are all regarding the biosiliceous forms, that is the radiolarian taxa as well as the diatom taxa recovered from the offshore and onshore sediments. So coming to the one important point that can deduce the depth or that can indicate the water level at that time, that is the planktic benthic ratio of the diatoms. And if you see the frequency here, almost 80% of the forms are planktic forms, whereas the benthic forms are very less. However, when we studied the diversity analysis, we saw that benthic forms are diverse in comparison to planktic, but the planktic forms as such are dominant in comparison to the benthic forms. This is the output, this is the ratio of the diatoms based on planktic benthic ratio. Now coming to the diversity analysis of diatoms from the offshore as well as from the onshore. If you see here, the dominance is less, however the diversity is much more in comparison to the dominance of the taxa. Same thing is repeating here in the onshore, and this result shows that the offshore and onshore sequence are more or less corroborating, in the sense that diversity analysis of diatoms show that the Shannon diversity is much more in comparison to the dominance. Coming to some environmental factors or the circulation of water in this part of the world. If you see here, this red line shows the southwestern monsoon circulation. This is the present work which has been published in 2021 by Liu et al. And this shows that this is basically based on the present study which is dated from last glacial maxima, right? So this red line that shows the northeastern monsoonal circulation, this one, red one, and this is the southwestern monsoonal circulation. And EICC, that is Eastern Indian coastal circulation pattern. This is the blue line, EICC, where it is marked, that shows the Eastern Indian coastal circulation pattern. And this is basically the present circulation pattern based on which the monsoon is based on. Because frankly speaking, from Neogene, there is not much change from Neogene, basically from the Miocene itself, there is not much change in this circulation pattern, though minor changes have been taken place. Now coming to the Tortonian itself. If you see here, we have used this data, and this is actually Westerhold et al. I have written in wrongly 2020 data, and it shows that the Tortonian thermal maxima were like here. This is based on benthic foraminiferal peaks, and the MCA event was here around Bardigalli and Langian, and the Tortonian thermal maxima was here. And this data has been generated by Gupta et al. Based on the abundance of some benthic foraminifera as well as delta 18O and delta 13C, and their data shows that intensification of biogenic bloom, that is oxygen minimum zone, started from about middle Miocene, that is around 12 million years, and the monsoon intensification took place around 10 to 9 million years. This is their interpretation, okay? And this is based on the study of benthic foraminiferal data itself. And they studied it from different cores of ODP, IODP, ODP, DSDP, different sites like 758, 216 DSDP, 214 DSDP, ODP site 7578, 7576, 68 ODP site, and 2752A ODP site. So what it has been in fact interpreted by Bledsoe et al. That the MCO event, that is Miocene climate optimum, where the weak South Asian monsoon was dominant during this period. The South Asian monsoon was weak during this MCO event, and here East Asian monsoon, EAIS, that is, it came into existence from Middle Miocene onwards, and here in the upper part of the Miocene, that is in the Tortonian, we have the expanded oxygen minimum zone, and the South Asian monsoon was very much active during this period. So that shows that during the Tortonian, we have found the upwelling responder taxa both in the offshore as well as in the onshore, that is demarcated by Thalassioneuma nistoides, Thalassiothris longissima, Actinocypla cinereus, and Cossinodiscus marginata. These are the taxa which can tell you about something, that they are basically ocean upwelling responder taxa, and ocean upwelling took place during that period, and that ocean upwelling actually led to the high primary productivity, and that ultimately gave to the intensification of the monsoon during the Tortonian time. So in conclusion, what I want to say, the diversity analysis, that is Shannon diversity index, indicates high diatom diversity during the Tortonian. High biosiliceous productivity was possibly due to the nutrient-rich sediment influx in the Northeast Indian Ocean from Irrawaddy River. Planktic benthic ratio indicates that the planktic diatoms dominate over the benthic diatoms. That means water level was completely high, and overall dominance of planktic diatoms suggests that during Tortonian there was predominantly deep water condition, and presence of a characteristic upwelling diatom taxa provides a strong evidence of ocean upwelling and strong monsoonal system during the Tortonian time. I am telling you because this reason, that rich amount of sediment influx in the Northeast Indian Ocean from Irrawaddy River took place, because there is a paper by Kurian et al. That is from the Andaman Basin. They shows that REE event shows that maximum influx of terrigenous input in the Andaman through the corridor of deep sea, that is from Irrawaddy Delta. I am going back to one of my slides here. If you see here, the Irrawaddy, Selvan, and these are the rivers that actually supply huge amount of sediments in the Andaman Sea. Apart from that, there is also sediment influx from the Brahmaputra and Meghna, but that is from the western part of the Andaman Arc. So with these, I just conclude that presence of characteristic upwelling diatom taxa provides a strong evidence of ocean upwelling and strong monsoonal system in the Tortonian. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Ghosh, for presenting us this nice perspective from the marine part on monsoonal intensity in the late Miocene. We have time for questions, please.
There's one in the chat box, Torsten.
Yes, I don't. Yes. Anand Rajoria, please ask your question.
Professor Anand Rajoria is asking how the changing Indian monsoon and ocean currents affect the study area, apart from upwelling, productivity, and so on and so forth.
Actually, in fact, during that time, I'm telling you, the recent data that shows that from the last glacial maxima, there is the oceanic circulation was like this, that in fact intensification of monsoon took place. We know that from the western side of that is from the western offshore also, we have in fact what I am telling you, we have the evidence of ocean upwelling as well as your intensification in monsoon. But from the Northeast Indian Ocean, there is not much evidence of upwelling. But when we are getting ample amount of upwelling taxa in the form of diatoms, as well as in the form of your other microfossils like your nanofossils or some radiolarian taxa, we can surely say that based on, because these are not dated, and we also need some geochemical evidences for establishing our interpretation. But frankly speaking, these sediments may say something based on geochemical analysis that these are highly productive, or the productivity of these sediments can say something about the intensification of this monsoon. Yes, regarding the circulation pattern, I told you earlier that the position of the, in fact, your islands in this island, in this islanding arc, took place in its, or attained its present position during the Miocene. So there is hopefully no change in the circulation pattern as such, except some minor changes like your tsunami effect or other things. Okay.
Other questions?
I can see how the changing Indian monsoon and ocean currents are affect your study area apart from upwelling and productivity. In fact, a study area, we are approaching the past about 10 million years or 9 million years, whatever it may be, and there is no change in at all in the core itself, which have been recovered, or in the outcrop itself while we are studying. Okay.
Are there any other comments or questions? This seems
Dr.
not.
Ghosh, I have a question.
Yeah.
Can I ask?
Yeah,
Yes,
of course.
please. Did I heard it correctly? You said benthic, there was more diversity in benthic.
Yes.
Benthics and plantics, they are more abundant.
Yes.
And that is tied to what, that the reason has been upwelling or high productivity. That's what you're linking to.
Actually, high productivity, we can say here, that is the irony of the situation I'm telling you. Because normally what we see in normal cases, that when the calcified organisms are much more dominant, then the silicified goes down. Okay, this is the normal theory that we called your what we called dissolution of, in the reverse case may be a dissolution in that sense. Okay, in that case the calcified microfossils are not too much in that sense if dissolution takes place. But this situation is entirely different here in Andaman, because you know that happens, this sort of situation when you find both your calcified microfossils as well as your silicified microfossils, that is evident from the equatorial zone, near the equatorial zone or the equator itself. Number 1 point. Number 2 point is this, that when you are in the subduction zone, because this, if you see the history of this Andaman R, it is in the subduction zone. In the subduction zone also, this sort of in fact effect takes place when we get both calcified as well as your silicified microfossils. Because when we got it, we are also in fact very much in trouble to interpret our results. Okay, after some time, one of my students will present her paper on calcareous nanofossils. You will hear that how well preserved the nanofossils are also from that particular time slice. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you. So we are perfectly in time, and I think it's time for a break. So see you back in 15 minutes, which is your coffee break. Hope that some coffee is served in Lucknow. For us, it's more the lunch break now. So see you back in at, let's see, 5:20 local time. Thanks a lot. Yes, do you think everyone is back now? So 42 in the audience. Yes, I think we can start. So welcome back to this second Tuesday session in the afternoon, and I would like to invite Park Chauhan to present a review of dated late Pleistocene environment studies in India. So, please.
Okay.
When you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm just sharing my screen now. Is that visible?
No. Yes, coming up now.
Full screen. Is the slide changing? I'm just testing it.
Go for full screen path.
Yeah, this is full screen. I'm changing slides.
No,
I can't see any change.
Not working?
It's not in the present mode, slideshow mode.
Yeah, on my computer, it is in present mode.
It's not showing here.
Let me try again. 1 second.
This happens every time. Why? On every computer. On every computer. This thing.
Okay, it is in, again, full screen mode. Is it visible?
It's coming up now.
Okay.
It's visible, but not in full screen mode.
It is, okay. I will just continue as is. Is that all right?
Oh.
It's not working. It's full screen on my computer, but it's not visible on the platform.
It is okay, we continue.
Try changing the slide, see if it happens.
Yeah, I'm changing now.
No.
No, yeah, I have this problem before too. So it works if it's not in full screen. Like,
now it's changing.
Now it works.
so it's working, but it's not in full screen. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, it's working,
Yes.
but not in full screen. Right, you're back on the title page now.
Yeah.
Yes, no, it's
So
fine.
I'll just continue like this, I guess.
Yes, all right, please go on.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So my topic is a review of dated late Pleistocene environmental studies in India. And I would just like to highlight that, firstly, this paper has been recently published in Man and Environment, and the majority of the work has been done by my co-author, Shashi Mehra, who is first author on the paper. So first, I'll just give a brief overview of late Pleistocene in India, and also implications for human evolution and associated problems. And then I'll get into our compilation. So late Pleistocene in India is representing 125,000 to 10,000 years ago. It includes key features such as LGM, Younger Dryas, Little Ice Age, and other events, including intensification in the seasonality of monsoon. This time period also witnessed global sea level changes and related glacial interglacial events. Environments were broadly diverse and suitable for human habitation, especially during MIS 5 and MIS 4 in some zones. We have no evidence of absence of human occupation because of environmental changes. The environments varied from a very broad area of savanna to dry and moist tropical woodland and grassland mosaic vegetation. But again, our studies are limited, as you'll see. This time period, it hosted Middle Paleolithic technologies, Upper Paleolithic technologies, and Mesolithic cultures. And possible more than one hominid species was present, besides Homo sapiens. This period also witnessed the arrival, the first or even the second arrival of Homo sapiens. It is not clear, and this topic is debated exactly when Homo sapiens arrives. And also this time period is representing high faunal diversity, and various plant species are known. Now, in terms of stone technologies, the subcontinent of India has everything from Oldowan to Microlithic, so spanning about 2 million, 2.6 million years, although the Oldowan evidence is controversial and not very well verified. But from 1.5 million onwards, we have a continuous and reliable record. The late Pleistocene is consisting of terminal Acheulean. The Acheulean more or less ends by that time. We also have overlap with Middle Paleolithic, which actually starts around 400,000 years ago. Then we have Upper Paleolithic phase, but again, it's not present in all regions of the subcontinent. And then we have Microlithic technology initiating at about 48,000 years in central India and Sri Lanka. The problem with the late Pleistocene evidence is that all of these technologies are very diverse. They're often overlapping spatially and chronologically. It's very difficult to pinpoint the presence of Homo sapiens based on these technologies, except for microliths. Everything else is ambiguous. We don't have that many human fossils yet for this time period. So we don't know exactly the timing of arrival of Homo sapiens, the nature of interaction between archaic populations and Homo sapiens, indigenous versus dispersal events, indigenous innovations of technologies, for example. What were the ecological factors for technological change? So there's many things that we don't know. But we do know that the technology after about 80,000 years onwards was very diverse and probably related to the ecological and geographic diversity across the subcontinent. So humans have been in India for at least 50,000 years and possibly longer. We might have had multiple dispersals into the region, and this is evident from genetic studies, archaeological evidence, and some fossil evidence. But when did they first arrive and with which technology is unclear and debated at this time. Some researchers think they came before the Toba eruption, 74,000 years ago, and some researchers think they came after the Toba eruption with microlith technology. So this is a very hot topic right now for debate. Late Pleistocene also witnessed extinction of several megafauna species, including 2 elephant species, Stegodon and Paleoloxodon, 1 Bos species, Bos pneumaticus, 1 Equus species, Equus pneumaticus, Hexaprotodon species, the hippo became extinct, and the ostrich also became extinct. But we do have broadly continuity of different mammals across the subcontinent. We don't really know what's going on too much in the Shivalik zone after the onset of the boulder conglomerate formation, but the remaining regions of central and peninsular India have ample late Pleistocene fauna, especially Son Valley, Narmada Valley, and other pockets. Now, these extinctions, again, it's not clear if they're related to human interference or climatic factors or a combination of the two. Ostrich populations probably were impacted by Homo sapiens because of the exploitation of the eggs for food, for making beads, as storage containers, and so on and so forth. Now, from a comparative perspective, based on published data, some studies have been done looking at Thar Desert, looking at a location in Andhra Pradesh, Juleru Valley, which has yielded primary YTT or younger Toba tephra deposits in association with artifacts, as well as some sites in Sri Lanka. The focus has been on MIS5, MIS4, and MIS3, mostly because of that time period overlapping with the radiation of Homo sapiens into Eurasia. Of course, there were earlier dispersals of Homo sapiens, beginning maybe before 200,000 years ago, but we don't have that evidence in Asia yet. All of the evidence of Homo sapiens in different parts of the world is variable. In Europe, it's older. In Levant, it's slightly younger. And in Asia, it's even younger. So we have different timings of the emergence of Homo sapiens in different zones. So these kind of studies have been done at a very broad level, talking about association between artifacts, environmental changes, resilience of populations, exploitation of rainforest resources. So there's a lot of broad studies done, but unfortunately, not enough studies have been done at archaeological sites. So what we decided to do, because there were a lot of theories going on about the impact of Toba eruption on populations, about the emergence of microliths because of environmental changes, and other broad theories, we wanted to just compile the information and provide a source of reference for researchers and see what kind of studies have been done in which parts of the subcontinent, in which proxies have been used, and how much information can we obtain to look at patterns of human adaptations and occupations. So we compiled information from different literature sources, and we probably missed a few studies when we hope to include them in future updates. But so far, we have compiled at least 116 studies based on publications, and compiled site names, the proxies that were used, the ages and associated methods, the interpretations of those researchers, and the reference source, of course. So we tried to just compile and quantify all of these pieces of information. We did not want to use this information to make any broad hypotheses or long-term inferences, because this is very preliminary compilation and there's a lot of gaps, as you'll see. So this is an example of some compilation for the Northwest region. We divided up the subcontinent into different zones. This is an example of compilation for the Central Zone. So these are just two examples, and there's so far at least 116 studies, which we're constantly adding on to in the future. So here's the distribution of those studies. The majority of work has been done on sediments, especially stable isotopes and geochemistry. Some studies have used a multi-proxy approach. Very few studies have worked on ostrich eggshells, for example, and some studies have worked on carbonates as well, and pollen. So we tried to focus only on studies that had absolute dates. There were many studies done, but they were lacking absolute dates. And most of them are focusing on stratigraphic approaches or indirect relative ages through fauna and archaeology. But we did not include those studies because they don't have absolute dates. And in the future, some of these absolute dates might change based on refinement and application of new methods. Now, those studies are shown here region-wise and proxy-wise. Most of the work has been done in Northwest Zone and the Himalayan Zone, followed by the Southern Zone and Northeast Zone. The least amount of work has been done in Ganga Plains and Central Zone, and this includes all proxies. And again, you can see the highest number of studies are associated with sediment proxies. Some have been done through multi-proxy records as well as pollen records. But again, these are just neutral quantification of the data, not meant to have any major inferences at this stage. And then studies done according to time period. We wanted to see which time periods we're focused on. And I think that there's one reason for this bias. You can see that most of the work has been done on sites younger than 60,000. And this is probably for two reasons. One is research bias, and of course, preservation bias of some context. But also another reason is probably that a lot of these sections were not amenable to various dating methods until recently. The focus on sites younger than 50,000 is because of that they were susceptible to radiocarbon dating and luminescence dating. But most of the older sections at the time of study in the last few decades were not properly, applicable for luminescence dating until recently. So now we can revisit those sections and try to get older dates, and especially for late Middle Pleistocene and older context, for which we have very little data. And finally, looking at a comparison of these time periods, we have information about varied rainfall, varied levels of aridification. Some areas we have done continuous stratigraphic studies. Some areas have been represented by individual time periods or individual layers. But overall, most of the focus is on amount of rainfall or amount of aridification, amount of vegetation. So there's, again, geographic bias as well as methodological bias. Now, why does this have important implications for paleoanthropology is because in the past, multiple hypotheses have been offered about arrival of Homo sapiens, impact of Toba eruption, innovation of different stone technologies because of environmental degradation. So we wanted to just see if there's any pattern like that available from the compilation. And we found no specific pattern showing a link with innovation of microliths and environmental changes, because recent discoveries show that microliths seem to appear before the environmental changes take place. And on the bottom, we have several sites like 16R, Sandhav, Katauti, Jwalapuram, and some sites in Sri Lanka that show that they have environmental proxy studies done, but based on the entire subcontinent, this is just a fraction of the work. So we don't have that many studies done at very promising archaeological sites, and we don't have also archaeological records being used at the quaternary sites. This needs to be done. So to conclude, just like summarize that we have major problems in terms of research bias at different levels. In the past, there were limitations of dating methods. So most of the focus was on radiocarbon and luminescence of the younger sites. But now older sites can be targeted, especially with luminescence, ESR, uranium series, and other methods when applicable. The biggest thing we learned from this compilation that there's large geographic gaps, temporal gaps, and methodological gaps that need to be filled across the subcontinent. There's a major disconnect between the environmental data and the archaeological evidences. Very little reconstructions have been done at the archaeological sites. So we don't know the factors of cultural and technological transitions. It's hard to say whether some sites represent incoming dispersals or regional innovations. Specific environmental context of dispersals and regional adaptations are hence unknown. There's also a paucity of human and animal fossils and associated absolute dates for most of these sites. And finally, I think we should view all of these individual interpretations at sub-regional levels. In paleoanthropology, there's a risk of using single site studies to talk about the entire subcontinent or entire region or even the entire valley. And we think that because of the variability shown across the Pan-Indian zone, we should be very cautious in how we interpret single site studies until we have more supporting data from other proxies, multiple dating methods, and overall consistency in one specific region. So in the meantime, we should just focus on comparisons, building up databases, and then maybe in the future we can get some patterns once we have enough dates and data. And finally, to show you the geographic gaps in the record, we have this northwest zone, the Indus Valley zone, for example, completely devoid of studies. We have the zone in the Ganga Plains and east of the Thar Desert, just north of central India, north of the Narmada Valley, devoid of studies. The Bengal region and the Bihar region, devoid of studies. The Ganga plains adjoining Nepal, for example. And then we have the central zone below the Vindhyans, east of the Deccan Plateau, the Western Ghats and all these areas, and a large chunk of peninsular India have no studies done. So we need to fill these gaps. We need to target well-stratified fossil sites as well as archaeological sites and try to work together in terms of collaboration between quaternary scientists and archaeologists to build up a more comprehensive network of this information. I'd like to thank the organizers for this event, as well as BSIP, ISA Mohali, the Ministry of Education for a STARS grant, and collaborating colleagues and students. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you very much for this nice overview. I think time is quite advanced and we should go to the next talk. Thank you very much again.
Is it okay?
Yes.
Hello everyone, this is Ricky Day. The topic is weight ratio of radiolarians, a tool for interpretation on paleoecology of Neogene sediments from Andaman and Nicobar Basin. First of all, I want to say about a little about Andaman and Nicobar Islands. It is a group of islands which is an excellent place where Neogene sediments are exposed in different islands. Here, my study area is Havelock Island, which is the largest island in Rich's archipelago group, and from this island we have collected samples from 3 outcrops. First one is this Kalapattar section, as you can see in there are the lithologs. Second is the South Point section, and third is the Lekam Point section. From Kalapattar section we have collected 22 samples, and it is almost 7 meter in thickness. Again, from South Point section we have collected 30 samples. It is almost around 15 meter in thickness, and the last one only 11 samples can be collected from this outcrop, and it is about 2.3 meter in thickness. Okay. Now, what do you mean by weight? It is it is the water depth ecology index, which is a very important method that is used for the paleoecological interpretation with the help of radiolarians. Okay, the weight ratio is calculated by the warm water taxa, which is divided by the intermediate or deep water taxa, and it was introduced by David Lazarus in the year 2005. Okay, now what it is used, its usefulness, and why this method is used, it has already been shown in the title that it is mainly used for paleoecological interpretation, and also it is a good indicator of paleoproductivity. Again, it is beneficial for other microfossils. Well, unfortunately, there is no such works on different other proxies or any silica proxy or any calcareous microfossils. Okay, a very less work has been done on this weight analysis. As I have already mentioned, Lazarus has introduced this method in the year 2005, and he applied on the samples that has been collected from the Pacific Ocean. Again, he has applied in 2006 from the Bengal upwelling system, and Roger and Decker in the year 2007 has collected samples from eastern and southern Indian Ocean. These are some of the radiolarians taxa that has been identified from the Havelock Island. I want to say some name of this. First, this one is a Stichocoris delmontensis. This is Didiomycetris laticonus, Didiomycetris mammilifera. This is Lithopera thornbungi. Then Siphocamphe lineata. Then There are some more. This is Calocyclata costata. This is Cornutella profunda. This is Dorcotus Pyrus elata. This is Dorcotus Pyrus dentata. This is Lirus Pyrus piceri, and so and so. Okay. From the radiolarians, there are some also marker radiolarians which are used for demarcate the age of the outcrops. Here we can see that this A represent the Kalapatar section. Almost from the base, this Calocyclata costata is present, and it is tending towards and it is present up to the topmost sample. So this outcrop falls under the Calocyclata costata zone or RN4 zone, which has been proposed by the Sanfilippo and Negrini in the year 1998. Again, in the section B, which is the South Point section, Calocyclata costata was present from the base to the top, but from the sample number 15, Dorcotus Pyrus elata was begin to appear, which falls under the RN5 zone. That means the age changes from Bardigillian to Langian. Again, at last, the Lecam Point section, here both these species were present, but at the top of the topmost sample, we have found this Lithopora thornbungi, which is a marker species of Seravillian age. So we can conclude that among the three outcrops, Lecam Point section is younger than the other two. Coming back to weight, now we have to find out how we will find the data based on ecology of radiolarians, as very less work has been done on this. So we have attempted an unique method to find out these ecological preferences of these particular radiolarian species. The database on the ecology of radiolarians has been obtained from different ODP program, DSDP and IODP program, and also from the websites such as Pangea and GBRIF. So here you can see the KP, SP and LP are the three sections. Ecological preferences means the species are either cosmopolitan, warm, or upwelling species or cold species, and these are the citations. And this method has been verified by David Lazarus itself, so we can use this method also. So these are the data. Okay. Now, with the help of the weight ratio, we have represent in a graphical mode, and where here we can see that the ratios are almost in a positive side, that the graph is tending towards the positive sides, which means that the species during Bardigillian to Seravillian are warm water species, and the warm water species is abundant in the time slice. And this ratio has been correlated with the diversity indices of radiolarians. Here we can see, that the Shannon diversity of the three outcrops, and it is almost in a higher side. That means the diversity is higher at that time. But wherever the diversity decreases, the weight ratio is also shifting towards the negative side. So, from all the here we can conclude that the overall Shannon diversity index of the three outcrops indicates the diversity of radiolarians was high during Bardigillian to Langian, which was dominated by the warm species. And in the Kalapatar and South Point section, the samples where the diversity is lowest, and it is reflected in the graph plotted from the weight ratio. Again, in the Lecam Point section, it has been noticed that the sample which has the lowest diversity, so the lower weight ratio, as I have already mentioned. Okay, from why we are getting this warm species and why the graph is shifting towards the higher values, because from this the weight ratio suggests a corresponding shift towards higher values that implies low export productivity. This is because unfortunately we have not found any upwelling or any coal species in that time, so we can conclude that there was no higher productivity or some events has been taken place on that middle Miocene. So at last we can conclude that the productivity was very low. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Day, for providing us insight in this interesting tool and applied on radiolarians. So we have time to discuss the topic. Any questions, please? I do not see any comments at the moment. So I'm not very well informed about this proxy you are discussing, but is it possible to say that in warm assemblages diversity is higher?
Yes, sir. Yes. Yes, sir. At that time only, because Amit Ghosh has already told in his presentation that during Tortonian there was an upwelling event has been taken place. So I am talking about only about the middle Miocene part. So at that time there was no such kind of event was recorded.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any comments, any questions in the audience? It seems not to be the case, so I would ask Vandana or Gaurav about the contribution of Friedrich Arya. Would it be ready now to present?
So I have sent a mail.
Yes, we are trying to receive his email and we will download it.
I think we should start the next presentation.
Yes, but we can do it.
Can you see my now?
Yeah, he is trying to present. Ritesh is trying to present.
Can you see something now?
Yeah, yes, visible.
Can you see my power presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
So now can I present it?
Yeah, but please check if it's not frozen again.
Yes.
Maybe change.
Yeah, it's now working.
It's working now. Yes, perfect. So it would be nice if you could present it now.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
The timing collision of India and Tibet based on fossils from Kasoli and Ladakh. So I was fascinated by H.P. Medlicott because he was the first one to discover fossils from Kasoli in 1864, and Kasoli was my hometown. And the day I started my first day in university doing my honors in geology, I coincidentally heard his name and the way he discovered fossils from Kasoli, and then I thought that this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life. And then whenever there was holidays, I would just go in Kasoli and hunt for fossils with my dog, Brownie. And by the time I completed my graduation, I had the largest collection of fossils ranging from trees, plants. This is massive trees, fossilized trees with organic matter. And then we had this lot of preservation of these trees also. When the roads were being cut, then we had the discovery of fossilized flowers. This was in 1987, I think, 89. First mammal from Kasoli, rhinoceros, earlier identified. Then these were insect wings, gastropods, freshwater, near coastal. And the best part was these gastropods. When they were discovered, they were like almost similar to the ones found in Kargil. Now I was sitting in Kasoli, just a student, and then all of a sudden just came to know that these had some resemblance from the Bhatnagar and Sani discovered some fossils from Wakachuk Kargil section. So like this was the other part of India, the cold mountain deserts in Kargil, and I was finding the close similarities, some unions, and this similarity. And I was fortunate to work with Professor Sani Bhatia sir and Robert Spicer. I did some taphonomic learning, and he visited Kasoli section. So it was quite a good learning for me. And then presented some papers in Wadia Institute International, then Japan, and then Geological Survey of India, and then twice in BSIP, I think. And then this was like a locality, the Carophyte locality, and on the basis of which we have dated Kasoli to be low Miocene times. But now these retaining wall has concealed um, all the fossils, and it was difficult. Ansuya from your institute, BSIP, came, and then we would try to collect some carophytes, but this retaining wall was all concealing them. So this is the then I had a lot of collection of plant fossils, maybe quite a bit, about 50 or 60, maybe 100 of leaves at that time. And then I collaborated with BSIP and with Avasti and Guleria and Rashmi, and then the most important thing which we found after our investigation was that there were 6 species which were very interesting, the Garcinia, Gluta, Pombritum, Clinogene, Syzygium. So these fossils are nowhere to be found in Himalayas, and they were confined to Andaman Nicobar Islands, Indonesia, Malaysian region. That means that they were all confined to the equatorial region, and I was finding them in Kasoli. But at that time, that was the only inferences which we could draw from it. And this is in Hindi, but it is like Kasoli mein mile Malaysia. Whatever findings we got was they were resembling more of Indonesia and Malaysian rather than the Himalayan part. So traces of Tethys could be extended to here or not. Many questions were there. And then this is Kasoli, Parvanu and section, and then but geologically we can divide it into the Kasoli formation, the Dakshai formation, the Sabatu formation, and the main boundary fault, separating it with the Shivaliks. So what next? So I completed my, I was doing my PhD, and then I didn't know what to do much about it because I didn't have any financial support also. So then we did some geological sections. What was the contact between the lower and the upper formations? So Dakshai ke saath, what was the contact? So we found a volcanic ash between Dakshai and Kasoli formation, and this was analyzed by ONGC and Najman also, and we found some very good Dakshai formation, vertically inclined beds. But these were all informations, Then were very good paleosols, and the white quartzite band, the beach sandstone, and then the contact between the Dakshai and the Sabatu formation. So this is now the marine environment, and then the non-marine environment. The marine and there was gradual shallowing up of it, and then we can see the massive folding here at the contact between this Sabatu formation and the Dakshai formation. So everything, then the passage beds and fossiliferous. First time we were able to get the fossil wood with oysters. Near the fossil wood with oyster in the same rock, that was quite interesting now. The organic matter was preserved here, so very near coastal environments, we were able to, the oysters here. ideas and the traces of Texas Sea was extending right up to Kasauli. So what next? Next, I got an opportunity to work as a hydrogeologist in Himachal government, so I shifted there, and then I was asked to do something in Ladakh for Tibetans, and then was doing something in Siachen, but continue, and then we were doing some groundwater exploration, and then these records were made. But at the same time, I was continuing exploring fossils in this region, So now Ladakh became the fossilized hump. So first time I found the fossilized wood here, very good, well preserved, and very near to the suture zone. We were able to find this fossilized wood, 20 million years fossilized wood, and very near to it. Then the Taritelas, almost similar to the ones we are finding in Sabatu. So Sabatu and Neoma, I found this in Neoma while I was doing a borewell for the Indian Army after this China escalation. Then we got this job, then the Taritelas, and then we found a lot of gastropods. These were also almost of the same species and genus which we were finding in Sabatu. So this was quite turning out to be very interesting, Sabatu and Neoma now. Neoma is like very near to the Chinese border, and then recently last year we find these oysters again here, and these were also again with the very near to the fossilized wood and oysters, here also almost like similar strata than white quartzoids. So this was like working, and then again a fossilized tree, the same thing which we were getting in the Kasaulis. So the fossilized wood, everything was turning out to be very interesting here. But now in Kargil also we found a lot of fossils, and then with the BSIP and Wadia Institute we published a paper, and a huge palm leaf. So every data was suggesting that there was some similarity between the fossils of Kasauli, Leh, Kargil, Neoma, and everything was turning out to be very interesting now. So what next now? Now I was remembering about Alfred Wegener, who founded the plate continental drift theory, and then in 1915 he started, and till 1950s nobody believed this theory. So the fossils play a very important role in actually determining the dispersal of the plates, and if we can find right fossils at right time, we can really reconstruct the environment in a very, very systematic way, and without any concrete model, without any colorful models on the ground, we can just, with simple plates, we can just explain in a very, very, very simple way, and that is what I try to do now. Now, with India moving northwards, things were turning out to be very interesting. Every year I would come hear so many dates, India is moving at this rate, India is moving at that rate, India collided at this time, India collided, initial collision was at this time, we had so many dates here, and then the final suturing would commence here, and the culmination would be at this date. So many dates and so many confusions. Any method you take up, and the next day you come up with any other date. So with this confusions, I was just trying to find out a simple way. So with folding, with movement, we were finding a lot of interesting folds, as we move from Leh, from Chandigarh to Leh, a lot of interesting folds develop here, and a lot of interesting marine fossils in this is Spiti, all pointing to very interesting data now. Now this is Molnar and all, very interesting models, colorful models, but very confusing data. And still we are following all these data, very, very interesting, We don't know what we are following, but we are still following all these data. So now these collisions, this was a very, very old model. I think in 94 when I was in Japan, then I presented, then this was a cartoon made by someone. So I used this. So this was all like a story, I had complete data from Kasauli and complete data from Ladakh. Almost still a lot of work has to be done, but still we were able to get some fossil evidences which were almost like making some story out of it, So these are again when the first start, when was the first collision taking place, and when the culmination ended. So a lot of papers, keep on and a lot of confusion. Now we just so we had this Keti fossil park, and now just imagine, can we find these huge massive elements in environment of Shaketi? Shivaliks? It's not possible. We can't find these tortoise here. We can't find these big loins here. So what does this indicate? Till 8.5 things were not conducive for the survival of these or the proliferation of these animals in this region. So where were they surviving? The big question. What were the tectonic implications now? Now dating of collision was mainly based on igneous rocks, metamorphic rocks, zircon dating कर लिया और अपने potassium argon dating कर लिया. We didn't have any control here in India. All dating was done by Europeans, and most of them come up with their own dates. Very good. I don't have any grudges against them, but they'll come up with all their dates, but of only igneous and metamorphic rocks. Now, very important, But, and then the classically, it is almost believed like 50 to 55 million years. The event started and culminated by 40 million years. That is the end. Himalayas were born by 40 million years, and whatever heights they attained, by 40 million years, it has been attained. That is the story which we grew up learning. But is it true? With all the facts which we have in mind? Now, fossils from Kasoli, fossils from Ladakh, they speak volumes that till 20 million years, Kasoli was near the equator. If Kasoli was near the equator, it's all homotaxial formations will be near the equator. So Kargil, Udhampur, Dharamshala, Mari, you say Neoma, Leh, everything was not here. It was 20 million years. Just take it back to maybe 4 to 11 years, 11 degrees north of equator. Peter Molnar and all, he got a very good award this year or maybe last year of geology, almost like a Nobel Prize. And then using improved reconstructions, we show that convergence between India and Eurasia did take place, did slow down in 20 million years. So according to their model, 20 million years, slowing down takes place and deacceleration seems to end at 10 million years. Now you just imagine. Kasoli is near the equator, India is striking it. So 20 million years, we are still near the equator and India strikes. So deacceleration starts there at 10 million years. So by Shivalik's times, middle Shivalik's, then also it was there. And reconstructions of Indian convergence with Eurasia, however, have shown no indication of significant convergence after 20 million years. There are so many authors, but the interpretation was like this has reached the Indus-Angko-Sucha zone and the culmination has ended. But that was not true. This was happening somewhere near the equator. So now, very interesting paper was recently published. The Paleocene latitude. So they, if you have been to Ladakh and then crossed Khardungla, you have the Khardungla village, and they did some sampling there of Khardungla volcanics. And this group of MIT, they concluded that between 66 and 62 million years, the Khardungla volcanics were near the equator. Now you just imagine. Paleolatitude positional of this were near the equator. So if this was near the equator, now you see, this paper I presented in 2015, fossils from Kasoli and Neoma, paleolatitudinal significance and their role in timing. So I said that they were near the equator. And 2000, this was I think 19 or 20, they are saying that the Khardung, if Khardung village is there, then the entire batholith is also near the equator. So very, very things are changing now, and they say that multi-stage collision instead of single-stage collision. So, and then in another conference in Vadia, I said that 18-20 million years. This was in November 2013. Marine influence was still persistent and equatorial influence present in Indian plate till 18 millions. That is the Upper Miocene times. So now interesting thing is, so if this entire stretch, you see this entire Khardung, this is Kohistan, and then Kohistan Ladakh batholith, and then this entire scenario just shifted to the equator. And then the craton, Indian craton pushes it back. Now this is the situation, and the models have to be, all the models in the now have to be rewritten in this sense. Now you see the Kasoli and homotaxial formations in northwestern Indian Himalayas. Now this is Kasoli, this is Dharamshala, this is Udhampur, this is Mari, this is Kargil, this is Tok, this is Neoma. So all these we have evidences from Sabatu to Kasoli formation. So from Paleocene to Lower Miocene times, and maybe some patches we get evidences of maybe up to middle Shivalics equivalent. And then we have this Chitravata formation. This is the very sequence here, equivalent to Kasolis. So very, very interesting setup and very, very interesting data coming up. So all these were not here 20 million years, plus take it back. 20 million years, just take Kasoli and other homotaxial formations. Dharamshala, Udhampur, Kargil, Mari, Chitravata, all were deposited near the equator, and the positional latitudinal positions was around 4 to 11 degrees north of equator, which clearly means that Himalayas were not born till 20 million years, but I would like to extend it to 10 million years. They were still there because of the mammals which we are getting and the type of flora and fauna which has not been really reinterpreted in terms of whether they could exist here or not. Now, if you see simple calculations, around 20 million years, Kasoli was at, today is at 30 degrees north, but at 20 million years, it was around 4 to 11 degrees north. So it needs distance of about 2,600 approximately, 2,600 to travel to this present position. Now you see, if we take a conversion rate of, if the movement of the Indian plate is about 5 centimeters per year, then it will take about 53 million years to reach. If it is 10 million years, it will take 26 million years to reach India. If it is 137 centimeters per year, 20 million years. And if it is 26 million years, then it takes 10 million years to reach. But if 10 million years also it was here, so I think the rate would be more than 560 centimeters per year, or 40 then it would make some sense of reaching. So after there was a collision with ICNA, but after Indian craton collided with these Swatu ductile sediments or the equivalent Murray formations near the equator, then something rapidly happened, and then things started moving. But we will definitely be coming up with a model very soon how things moved after that. So maybe two collisions, one with the Indian craton colliding with Kasoli ductile Sabatu, and maybe Shivalik also, and near the equator. So 10 million years if we include the Shivaliks also, and then this plus the Indian craton moves forward with the Ladakh batholith and then collides with the present positions of what we call the Shok suture or Indian suture, or maybe the Ladakh and the. So there are very interesting results, and I have a lot of questions. I cannot answer all the questions right now, but this is the what I have concluded in the last 25 years or maybe 30 years of my research. There is a lot of discrepancies in the data of whatever which we have been told by the radioactive datings of the of zircons and all, dated from the igneous or the metamorphic rocks from the suture zone or across the suture zone or here and there. But the paleontological data is a very concrete evidence to suggest that things were not as simple as we were shown. And if we follow the Wegener theory and the principles of a simple theory that plants cannot move, plants will stick there and they will not tell lie. So wherever we are getting those plants, they have their own stories, and we have to understand their stories and come up with a very significant solution. The important thing is now preservation. So, I'm just ending it with the last line, sir. So this is the silicified wood which I found long back, with parallel to the in a long channel, and this is, we preserved it, and now we are making a Tethys fossil museum where we are almost collecting all the fossils to show whatever we are saying and preserve it in this museum so that everyone can have a very simple glance of the entire Himalayas here in Kasoli. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to present here.
Yes, thank you very much for giving this lovely report. which would certainly deserve much more time. Well, time is quite advanced now, but maybe one short comment. Yes, Bob, please.
May I ask one question, Torsten?
Yes, sure.
Sorry. Which one, Torsten, is?
Ritesh?
Yeah, I've seen Bob first.
Okay. Thank you. Ritesh, good to see you after all these years. I think it's more than 20 years.
Sir, thank you.
I enjoyed the presentation. It's very provocative, but needless to say, I don't agree with all your interpretations. But it's very clear that the timing of the collision between India and Eurasia is one of the most critical dates yet to be pinned down in the geological sciences because it has so many implications. What do you, and I agree with you that the old models that we have are no longer viable. There was a paper published earlier this year by Ann et al. That recorded Indian sediments on the Eurasian plate at 61 million years. Now, if that is correct, it means that Greater India was much, much larger than people had previously considered, Greater India being that which is subducted now, or that all the paleomagnetic work, which has shown the changing paleo latitudes, is wrong. So I wonder whether you were aware of that paper, and if so, what did you think of it?
So I have not been to that, seen that paper, but I would like to say one paper doesn't solve, doesn't mean anything now. That is just a preliminary investigations, and I think with lot of thought process, when we say that it was not happening here, then a lot of people, we have got concrete evidence in terms of fossils now. 20 million years, Himalayas were not joined. They were separated by a distance of about 2,600 kilometers. So now, sedimentologist, mineralogist, anybody who wants to prove something has to give a very strong evidence. Not one paper will change my opinion, you know. They have to come up, sedimentologists from all over the world working should come up with an opinion, and if they say something, then we can say that no, plants are saying these things, our fossils are saying these things, they should be here. But if you can prove, really prove, because all other models won't work now. And because earlier they said that Hemis conglomerate in Ladakh is the conglomerate part, the igneous part, the granite is being contributed by the Ladakh batholith, but I have not been able to find even single batholith of Grath, a single piece of Ladakh batholith in that Hemis conglomerate, which is a distance of less than 100 meters. So I request that not one paper should change our opinion. We have got ample amount of evidences, plant fossils, and then need of the hour is, yes, we have to investigate more on plant fossils. Let the sedimentologists XYZ do their work, but we should stick to the findings which we have got, and they are substantial evidences, you know, in terms of turriteras, in terms of marine organisms from Sabatu, the entire stretch we can now see of homogeneity, you know, in terms of lithology and also in terms of the fossil findings. So my request is, one paper should not let them come up with maybe hundreds of papers and then discuss among themselves. Then they will contradict, and then let them form an opinion. Then they tell us. Then we will think of. Otherwise, they are just taking some sample from here and then making the entire story of Himalayan basin. Where is the basin? Tell me, sir. Where is the basin, sir? If we are getting Sabatu and sir, this is my, because I have for the last 25 years failed to understand where is Kasoli basin and where is getting sediments from Himalayas. When Kargil is same, Kargil and Kasoli is same. So separating from 2,000, maybe I am not able to actually calculate the distance between the Kasoli and Kargil now, but they are considerable distance, different geographical identities. But once upon a time, they were all one basin near the equator. They have been folded and brought here. Very interesting, sir. So we should rely and be confident about the fossil findings which we have. Let them prove, the sedimentologists, the geochemists, the daters of zircon dating, radiocarbon dating, igneous dating, sediment, or they will come up with all this stuff. But let them prove. Otherwise, also these are the findings, the sedimentological finding and the paleontological findings from just 100 meters. What you are taking the samples from? We are getting 20 million years rocks. You are dating them to be 100 million years. The granites, or maybe the carbons. So let us build our own stories, sir. The lack of paleontological data from Ladakh, I think, was the question, was the problem of not getting us due recognition, and we were just relying on the dates. But now we have got not very good. I will say that I have not done very, but in the last 25 years we have been able to get substantial amount of data from Kargil, Ladakh, Neoma, everywhere. And every rock we are picking up is a fossil now. Every rock we are picking up is a marine fossil or a plant fossil, something to do with something now. Yesterday only, I have just sent samples to Vandana ji, and there was a lacustrine lake. Plant fossils for the first time, so beautifully preserved, sir. So I'll just say that, Robert, you will be just fascinated to see the roots and the nodules and the that will be another talk there now. So I'll say that we should stick to and let the sedimentologists come up with a concrete evidence. I'm not going to leave them now.
Okay, thank you. The audio got a bit scrambled there from times, but I think I followed you. Anyway, very provocative.
I look forward to the, yeah, Robert, nice meeting you. And the taphonomy paper, I just want to publish it. I have not published it yet. So that thesis part is still lying with you, okay? We will publish it together, whatever you are. Okay, thank you very much.
All right, I think we definitely need to continue. And I would ask Lopamud Mudra Roy to present us on calcareous nanofossil events and sedimentation rate during the Tritonia from North Indian Ocean. Please.
Thank you very much.
Is it okay?
Yes, looks good.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I am going to present the calcareous nanofossil events and sedimentation rate during Tritonia from Northeast Indian Ocean. So calcareous nanofossils are one of the best index fossil or marker to establish the biostratigraphy for regionally as well as globally, and it can date the sedimentary sequences very precisely. So the samples for the present study has been collected from a sediment core, that is NGHP 0117A from Northeast Indian Ocean, and the length of the whole core is 691 MBSF, and the whole core is divided into 3 subunits on the basis of the lithology. For the present study, I have used the lithostratigraphic subunit 1C, and in this subunit, both siliceous and calcareous materials were present. So now come to the biostratigraphy. So as I told that calcareous nanofossils are one of the best marker to establish the biostratigraphy. So for this study, I have used the mainly different types of calcareous nanofossils. They are represented by Discoaster hamartus, that is the last occurrence of Discoaster hamartus at 675.34 MBSF, that demarcated 9.65 million years, and above that the base paraacme or bottom paraacme of Reticulophenicis pseudoumbilicus at 639.59 MBSF, that demarcate 8.80 million years, and above this the FOs of Discoaster quinqueramus and Discoaster bergerini at 561.32 MBSF, that demarcate 8.20 million years. So on the basis of the first occurrence or last occurrence of those calcareous nanofossils, the studied section has been divided into three zones, that is NN9 to NN11 zone of Martini 1971 and CNM 13 to CNM 16 zone of Backman et al. 2012. So now come to age connotations for the bottommost sample and topmost sample. So to determine the age of the bottommost sample at 684.09 MBSF, the first occurrence of discoaster hamartus has been used, that is less than 10.49 MA. So the age for the base of the core can be designated as less than 10.49 MA. And to determine the age of the topmost sample at 369.62 MBSF, the first occurrence of Amaryllis primus, that is 7.39 MA, has been used. So the age of the topmost sample of the studied section can be assigned to greater than 7.39. So overall, the age of the total studied section of the core ranges from less than 10.49 MA to greater than 7.39 MA. So apart from the marker calcareous nanofossils, that is discoaster quincuramus, discoaster barberini, discoaster hamartus, and reticulophoenista pseudoumbilicus, there are some associated calcareous nanofossils that are represented by calcidiscus masontrine, Propolypus pelagicus, Pontospera discopora, Pontospera multipora, Helicospera carteri, and reticulophoenista hacki, and reticulophoenista minuta, Sphenolithus moriformis, discoaster vellus, etc. And one important thing is that the reticulophoenista, there are two calcareous nanofossil taxa, that is reticulophoenista minuta and Sphenolithus moriformis, that were very much abundant from the that has been analyzed from the present study, and they are very important in terms of productivity. So now come to estimation of the sedimentation rate. I have used calcareous nanofossils along with the two siliceous microfossils, that is diatoms and radiolarians, to estimate the sedimentation rate. The first occurrence, the last occurrence, and the evolution and transition of those microfossils have been used to determine the sedimentation rate. Now, after plotting the different diatom, radiolarian, and nanofossil events, in the age has been plotted in x-axis and the depth has been plotted in the y-axis, and then a base fit line has been drawn to join all the points, and thus the average sedimentation rate was found during Plutonian, that is approximately 151 meter per million years. Now this is the paleogeographic distribution of the marker calcareous nanofossils, and this map shows the distribution mainly in the Indian Ocean and the equatorial Pacific Ocean, and the data has been taken from DSDP, ODP, and IDP expeditions, and also as well as also from the present study on NGHP 0117A. So come to conclusion that Tortonian age has been assigned based on the characteristic index taxa of calcareous nanofossil that I have already discussed, and on the basis of the first occurrence, last occurrence, and evolution transition of those microfossils of calcareous nanofossils, diatom, and radiolarians, the rate of the sedimentation was very higher, that is 151 meter per million years. And the two most important taxa, that is reticulophoenista minuta and Sphenolithus moriformis, that were very abundant in the present study, so that can indicate the enhanced productivity during Tortonian time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for presenting this interesting data. There's time for questions, please. Any comments? At the moment, I do not see any raised hands or remarks, so Being late, we come to the next talk as suggests. And I would ask Rimpi Chetia as presenter of the next talk entitled Organic Hydrographic and Geochemical Characterization of Mainly Lignite Deposits, Tamil Nadu, India, Insights into the Source Flora, Depositional Environments, and Hydrocarbon Generation Potential. Please
Thank you, sir.
go ahead.
Is the slides visible?
Yes, seems
Yeah,
perfect.
okay. Okay, good evening, everyone. Today's chair, honorable keynote speaker, and today's speakers of the talks, and all the scientific community that is present here. Today, the presentation topic is Organic Petrographic and Geochemical Characterization of Navali Lignite Deposits, Cauvery Basin in Tamil Nadu, India, and its insight into the source flora, depositional environment, and hydrocarbon generating potential. It is a little bit different from what we have been hearing in the last talks, but we also need to know what in the rest of the marginal parts of India was going on when the Himalayas or the Neogene climate was, the Neogene times were going on in the upper part of the Cretan. So this mine is one of the biggest mines of lignite in Asia, with yielding 330 million tons. It is situated in South India in the district of Navali and in the Cauvery Basin. We have two mines here. This is the mine 1 with the litholog. I have, it mainly consists of alluvium, sandstone, and of course lignite and some types of clay. Similarly, this is the other one. It has a more of sandstone and of course lignite. So we have done the organic petrography. So these are the pictures of the main kind of macerals that we can find. We have textinite, which is the preserved, like we can see the cell structure in there, in the left-hand corner in the first picture. These are the preserved herbaceous, these are the preserved vegetative matter, like big trees. Then we have ulminite, same. And then we have densinite. These are mainly the broken parts of textinite and ulminite, as well as parts of broken herbaceous matter. In the then we have samifusinite and funginite. These are also macerals. Macerals are nothing. They are like the organic parts of the lignite. Like how a mineral forms a rock, the macerals form the lignites. They are organic matter. And we have mineral matter in there also. And then we have cutinite. Cutinite are the third kind of macerals, which are called the liptinites. Okay, so they give the hydrocarbon potential of lignites. The cutinite is nothing but the cuticles preserved. Then we have sporinites. Sporinites are the spores, and then we have the algae portion, that is the alginite. Here we see a Botricoccus, which are very important for crude oil production. In crude oil source rocks, we find this. So we have plotted this GWI and VI plot, which gives us the condition of the deposition. Here we see that all the values from both the mines are almost in the inundated marsh. It's mostly between areotropic and mesotrophic. That is, there is a little bit of water and swampy area. These are calculated by using the count of the macerals. We have another plot, which is jellification index and tissue preservation index. We can see that it is found that most of the samples are formed in the limnotelemetic That is an inundated condition, like a little bit of water is there, but mostly a combination of both terrestrial and marginal. Okay. The next proxy that we use is organic geochemistry data, and we used alkanes and terpenoids there. This is the distribution of the alkanes in the samples. We can see that the distribution is from C19 to C35, which means that there are a lot of sources in there. It may be macrophytes, it may be other aquatic plants, some very much higher plants also, some algae and everything. Also, the abundance of C25 says that it has aquatic input. These are the indices that we have calculated by using the area. These are semi-quantitative data, and the average values will, these are the significance, like the ACL values gives us warmth and wetness. ACL value is very important because ACL values have helped in deducing PTM2. ACL values higher than 30 have always been shown by the PTM areas and PTM samples. So we can see that temperature was quite high here. And then we have the P aqueous index that relates to the aqueous input. Then we have the pristine phyton ratio, which denotes the oxidative condition. So here we can see that it had a redox kind of condition. Then we have TAR, that is a terrestrial aquatic ratio, which is very high. As you can see, this is 19.41. So there is a high input of terrestrial plants in here. These are the compounds. Mostly I have included the terpenoids. Terpenoids are very good source markers. In fact, in case of angiosperms, oleanins are very high. You can see here that we have a lot of oleanins, which denotes that they are from higher plants, mostly angiosperms. Gymnosperms, we can't see gymnosperm markers because gymnosperms are generally given by the markers are generally diterpenoids, which are not prominent here. Then we have hopanes. Hopanes are mainly derived from bacteria, so we can say that there had been bacterial degradation. Okay, so we have included some ultimate and proximate data. This is mainly for industrial utilization, but we can also see that the sulfur content here is a little higher, but not so much. It says that it has sea incursions, it denotes. Also, we can see the GCV data here. And GCV data, when it reaches up to 5,000, it means that the sediments are highly mature. But here we can see that it is less than 5,000. So hence, it is a little less mature. And these are similarly, in fact, useful for industrial utilization mostly. Here is less ash. That means it is good for industrial use. Then the moisture is high, and the volatile matter is also high. We have plotted, we have used the molecular hydrogen to carbon ratio and oxygen to carbon ratio to plot the type of kerogen. Kerogen is nothing but the hydrocarbon that is insoluble, the organic matter that is insoluble and present in the source rock. So we can see that it is falling in between type 2 and type 3. Type 1 is mainly oil production, type 2 is mainly oil plus gas production, and type 3 is gas production. So as it lies between these two, we have we can say that they produce gas and oil both, for both the mines. So these are the inferences. Hence we can conclude that these are mostly a subtropical climate deposit. During this time, the shoreline is almost like the present shoreline today, and the deposit, the water The water condition was like that in the east it was supplied, the water was from the sea incursion, and from the west there were river incursion, river sediments. So it is a marginal kind of deposit. And it is very important because there are still controversies regarding the age of this deposit. And these deposits are very useful, as we all know energy is important. So thank you, and I'm open to questions.
Yeah, thank you very much for showing this nice minds and interesting discussion of provenance of organic matter and various kinds of analysis. We have time for questions, so please go ahead. Are there any comments? Yes, Bob, please.
Yeah, I enjoyed the talk, but towards the end, I looked through the abstract and there was no mention of an age of the deposits. And your talk, you just touched on the end there that the age is not well known, but you know, it's very frustrating if we don't know the age of a deposit. What do you think the age of that deposit is?
Jyoti, can you hear?
Yeah, we can hear now.
Jyoti, you are muted.
Admit.
Hi, sorry,
yes,
I think I got disconnected.
Ah, did you hear my question?
No, I didn't actually.
Ah,
Pardon,
okay.
could you?
Okay, I enjoyed the talk.
Yes.
Very interesting work. I looked through your abstract and I didn't see any mention of the age of the deposits. And towards the end of your talk, you mentioned that the age is not well known.
Yes, yes.
Without an age, it's very difficult to make any sense of all the work that you've done. So what do you think the age is?
Actually, sir, there has been work. And people have found out assemblages of Miocene from there. Some have assigned a middle Miocene age, and some people have assigned, in fact, people from BSIP only have assigned a middle Miocene age. But there had been also Paleogene assemblages in that. Some workers have also defended that there might be, like components of Paleogene, because Paleogene is older, so they might have been continued. So they say that it is mostly Miocene. Also, some workers have also found dipterocarps recently. In 2019, there had been fossil dipterocarps. So I think it's a Miocene, and we are working on that, and we will keep looking for the exact.
Okay, so the youngest date call you have is middle Miocene.
Yeah, middle Miocene.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
More questions? No, I don't see any raised hands. I would have a question. Do you consider your coal deposits mainly allochthonous, or is there evidence for in situ reforming?
For this deposit, sir, do you mean about this deposit?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it is allochthonous, but there are the rivers, the 5 paleo channels had been identified too. So there might be some I think there is a possibility of both, because there had been report, the east coast, The east coast of the deposit has sea influence, and the west side has river influence. Like 5 paleo channels had been identified, so there might be a mixture of both.
Okay, so you assume a considerable processes of reworking as well, which might explain the wide range of components in the
Yes, there had been a wide range of
All right.
compounds. Yes,
Yeah, thank you very much.
thank you so much.
So I think we can move on and come to our last talk of this Tuesday session of conference. And I would like to invite Jian Wang to present on Oligocene flora and climate of the Along Bay in northern Vietnam. So
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello everybody, I'm Huang Jian from Xinfang Biotropical Botanical Garden, Chinese Academy of Sciences. Today I will introduce you the Oligocene flora and climate of the Along Bay, northern Vietnam. Asia, or Paleotropics, is a major component of the world's biodiversity hotspots. To understand the origin of modern biodiversity in this area, it is necessary to study the Cenozoic paleobotany in this area. The origin of East Asian flora is a key to understand the tertiary flora of the northern hemisphere, while tropical Asia is an important source of the East Asian flora. Northern Vietnam is in the transition from tropical Asian to East Asian flora. Due to the gentle change of altitude, not like the mountainous Himalayan and Myanmar Yunnan part, change of vegetation is mostly gradual and zonal, which is an important area for studying the transition of tropical to subtropical flora and vegetation. However, compared to South Asia, our colleagues in India have made a lot of works. Paleobotany study of this region into China is quite incomplete. Fortunately, 3 years ago, we found a good locality in this region. Our fossil site is located on the west coast of the Tonkin Gulf, in the north part of the Vietnam. Halong Bay, which is listed as a World Natural Heritage Site due to its spectacular Mortimer karst landscape. North to the Halong Bay, here is a basin called Humboldt, with a series of Cenozoic sediments. This region today has a typical age tropical climate, with a mean annual temperature of 24 Celsius, and the coldest months still reach 17 Celsius, and their precipitation is over 1.6 thousand millimeter. And from this chart, you can see it's a typical monsoon climate with rain and heat during the same period, summer. The lowland of this region has been exploited for a long history, and the zonal vegetation is basically wiped out. We can know how it could be from some preserved area, which is a tropical forest with dipterocarps such as Hopea, Vatica, and Andalias are all tropical elements. Meanwhile, on the steep limestones, large amounts of vegetations are preserved. They are dwarf forests made of Euphorbiaceae, ficus, and other typical limestone taxa. Now start with our fossil. A continuous set of Cenozoic sediments has been found in the Humboldt Basin. The section is made by the Donghole Formation of the bottom and the Tugiao Formation on the top. The mudstone of Stonehole Formation produces a large number of exquisite plant fossils. The age of Stonehole Formation is mainly based on the vertebrate fossils like crocodile and pollen in nearby areas, the Nadon coal mine, which is Oligocene, while the Tugiao Formation is Miocene to Pliocene. After years of classification and identification, now we have an understanding of flora. This flora is not that diverse, only has about 20 to 40 species, but most of them are good enough for identification, and most of the identification is based on leaf architecture, and some of them have cuticles. Now let me introduce them to you briefly. The most common taxa in the flora is Fagaceae, including deciduous and evergreen crocus, little carpus, and castanea. Meanwhile, like a lot of other floras, Lauraceae leaves are diverse here, such as cinnamon, lindera, and Caridaphnopsis. But the total specimens amount of the Lauraceae is not a lot. Another common group is a series of Hemi-Eucaptodromous veined leaves. Most of them belong to the Hopia of Dipterocarpaceae, which is the characteristic taxa of Asian tropical forest. The shape of them varies, and we can also find some broad-leaved shoria. Other species are diverse, but not high in specimens amount. Many of them are calcifier trees such as Ficus, Platycaria, Murraya, and Scopia. The pantropic Coelospondias is also occur here, while Liquidamba with unique trilobed shape are also common here. And a typical tropical plant, palm, we have a lot of the specimens here. This recently published Sabalites coloniae is to commemorate the female French paleobotanist Marlene Colani, who made a pioneering work in northern Vietnam and Yunnan. In fact, recent years in southern China, a series of fossil localities are reported, range from Yunnan, Guangxi, Guangdong, Hainan to Fujian province. After a comparison of them, we can find a high Paleogene floristic similarities in the Pan-Tonkin Gulf region, which is characterized by the combination of Fagaceae, both evergreen and deciduous, Lauraceae, Dipterocarpaceae, Liquidamba, and Sabalites. This combination, when it gets cold, the Dipterocarps disappear, but other things are almost the same. We call it the Pan-Tonkin Gulf floristic region. We reconstructed the paleovegetation based on the amount of the specimen and the habitat of each species, and we can find that there was a prominent vegetation heterogeneity. The flora is a mix of tropical lowland dipterocarp forest with a mountain evergreen forest, also limestone dwarf forest, which has a lot of deciduous taxa, which is quite similar to the vegetation in this area Halong Bay today. This phenomenon is quite common in the age tropical area today. For example, this photo A shows the dipterocarp in the valley and the Fagaceae trees on the ridge. And this photo B shows that the forests are in the limestone basin, but only shrubs on the stones. We also reconstructed the paleoclimate by the coexistence approach of 22 taxa and a clamp of 36 morphotypes. The Oligocene mean annual temperature is a little bit lower than today, and the coldest month is much colder. The mean annual precipitation from coexistence approach is as much as today, but the clamp one is higher. This result may be caused by the limestone taxa. They need the same temperature as the lowland taxa, but much less in water usage. Whatever, it is still a tropical climate, not far from today. The monsoon index is only 3/4 of today, indicate a weaker monsoon. Since the flora, vegetation, and climate don't change a lot in this area from the Oligocene to today, this place could be a good source of the modern East Asian flora. There's much evidence that there was a semi-arid belt in eastern China at Paleogene. But after the Neogene, when Tibetan plateau uplifted, it gradually disappeared and covered with the broad-leaved evergreen forest of southern China today. However, the southeastern China, the plant diversity is significantly smaller than that of the southwestern China, which borders the Indochina Peninsula. That may also indicate that the tropical Asia is a major source of the subtropical diversity in southern China. Since the Halong flora is a single evidence, we are keep working on find other fossil sites in the tropical Asia region. We have already found 8 good localities in Vietnam, Thailand, and Yunnan that will give us a more complete understanding of the Cenozoic biodiversity evolution there. Thanks to all the colleagues from China, Vietnam, Thailand, and UK. Thanks for the financial support from the National Nature Science Foundation of China. And at the end, thanks for your attention.
Yeah, thank you so much for presenting this nice study. Are there any questions? Yes, I can see Bob here. Please, Bob.
Yeah, Huang Jian, very nice, very clear talk. You know, I know something of this flora because we have discussed it. But one thing we discussed was the fact that it may or may not be at sea level as an explanation of why the climate is a bit cooler, particularly given its position and its age. So have you settled on whether or not it was at sea level?
We don't have many evidence about that, but we have some pterocarpal forest that is only occur in lowland, and the lowland in Southeast Asia today, the definition is about lower than 600 meters. So based on the plants, it can't be that high, more than 800 or 1,000.
Your face as well.
Okay, thank you. 谢谢.
Yes, please. Bob Morley.
Hello. Sorry, I'm a little latecomer to this meeting, so I missed the earlier discussions. But with respect to the altitude that Bob Spicer brought up, we recently published a study on the Songhong Basin, which is very near to this locality. And down in the mid-Oligocene, we found assemblages in a lacustrine setting that were absolutely full of ulmus pollen. And this suggested to us something like the Sabana Bogotá in South America, because we're still in the basically very close to within the tropical belt, more or less, and just into its northern margin. And to have such abundant quantities of ulna, it was something like in one cycle, maybe 60% of the pollen was from ulna. And this suggests a local source going maybe on a swamp, on a lake, or around a lake. And this suggests some sort of intermontane basin. As you went up through the Oligocene to the Miocene, the percentage of montane elements gradually disappeared. And we felt the best explanation of this was that we were dealing with an intermontane basin, maybe 1,000 meters, something like that, at about the mid-Oligocene. And I think this may be an explanation of many of these anomalies where we've got combined tropical and temperate aspect floras. And maybe that's the case here.
Yeah, I have asked some tectonic geologists. They said, based on their research around this area, there's no very serious geological change by the tectonic data. So, but we can't say that's all. But now it's very hard for me to say it's sea level. But we have done some pollen palynology analysis too, but we don't find some mangrove things. Yeah.
Well, that may if we look at assemblages from the Song Hong, again, there's no mangroves in that section at all. So maybe that's something you should think about.
Yeah.
It's good. I really enjoyed your talk. Excellent.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, but in fact, from other compilations of Paleogene floras of East Asia and the analysis using the coexistence roach, we indeed had other evidence for surprisingly cool Southeast Chinese records. Other Paleogene strata where you would have expected to see warmer conditions with respect to generally globally raised temperatures at the time. Yes, Bob?
Yeah, I would just say that this is a very common problem throughout that area. Or say it's an issue, it's not really a problem. If you look at the floras from Hainan Island, the Chang, for example, that is a very strange mixture of what you might term warm, even cool temperate taxa with tropical taxa. And we wrote a paper some time ago commenting on the fact that the temperatures that we derive from the plants are much cooler, and did again speculate on whether there was an elevation component involved. If there is, we're talking about 1 to 1.6 kilometers elevation for the Chang in Hainan Island. So it's an issue that goes throughout the region. And as far as I'm aware, we have not yet found a definitive sea level datum from which we can then measure everything else. So we're kind of floating around in these speculated intermontane basin elevations, 1.6, 1.5 kilometers. And it's really frustrating at the moment, because if we could locate a sea level datum, then we could then go back to the modelers and everybody else and say, look, these cool temperatures at low latitudes at sea level really do throw a spanner in the works in terms of latitude and temperature or latitudinal heat transport in these warm worlds.
Yes, right. Exactly.
Yeah, maybe they are the temperature thing. They are also origin from tropics. I'm just guessing, because in our Thailand localities, it's in the North Thailand, but today it's a lowland. But we have Betula and other things like looks like Sequoia and other much cooler things.
Yeah, it's an interesting mix at the moment, difficult to explain in terms of perceived wisdom.
Any other comments or questions on this? This is not the case, obviously. So it's my pleasure to close this session for today. And I would like to thank again all the speakers and contributors. And I have to say I learned a lot and think apart from some minor technical problems, we had a very great day on this conference. So I would like to hand over to Vandana or Gaurav for some more details. And thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Torsten.
Chris.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.